Blackstone Audiobooks presents
The Song of Roland in English. This French epic, known as La Chanson de Roland, was originally recited and sung by the trouvères, or troubadours in Old French. To give the listener an idea of what that might have sounded like, Professor Duggan sings the first 6 lines, repeating the same line of music for each line of the poem. This method of recitation was said to have produced a hypnotic effect on the medieval audience. Directly after the Old French, the poem begins, spoken in English by the narrator.
Charles lires nostrem perere magnes, setans toutes plaintes ad estet en Espagne. Trescan la mer, conquis la terre altagne, ni ad castel qui devant lui remagne. Mur ne citet, ni estre mes à freindre, for Saraguts, qui est en une montagne.
Our sovereign Charles, the mighty emperor, 7 long years has been on Spanish soil, and conquered that proud land right to the sea. It has no fortress that can still resist, no wall unbreached, no city unsubdued, save Saragossa on its mountain top. The king, Marsil, rules there, the foe of God, who serves Mahomet to Apollyon praise, yet he too shall know grief, do what he may. King Marsil, safe in Saragossa's walls, within a shady garden takes his ease, reclining on a blue-veined marble slab, and ringed by more than 20,000 men. His dukes and counts he summons with these words,
Now hear, my lords, what bitter load we bear. Charles, the great emperor, has left fair France to wreak our ruin in this very land. I have no host fit to contend with him, no force of men able to shatter his. So give me counsel, you my wisest men. Say how I may escape both death and shame.
No pagan there replies a single word, but Blancandran of Casteldelve Alfund. Blancandran was a valiant knight-at-arms, as wise as any in the pagan realm. Here was a man of worth to aid his lord, and to the king he said,
Now fear no more. Offer proud Charles, in all his arrogance, your faithful service as to a true friend. Promise him lions, bears, dogs, camels too, 700, with 1,000 molted hawks, silver and gold borne by 400 mules, and 50 laden carts to drive away, so he may pay his mercenaries well. Say he has warred in our lands long enough, and should go back again to France and Aix, where you will follow him at Michaelmas, pledge your acceptance of the Christian faith, and in all honor take him as your lord. If he wants hostages, send them as well. 10 or a score to guarantee our word. Send him the sons our wives have borne to us. Mine too shall go, albeit to his death. It is far better that they lose their heads than we yield up our honor and our lands and be reduced to begging for our bread. By this right hand of mine, and by the beard that blows against my breast, you'll see the Frankish host disband at once. Back to their land of France the Franks will go, and with each man return to his domain, Charles will observe high festival at Aix, in his great chapel there at Michaelmas. The term will pass, the day will come and go. No news or word from us will reach his ears. The king is proud. His wrath is soon aroused. Our hostages will have their heads cut off. But better far they should lose their heads, and we yield up the bright, fair land of Spain, or suffer destitution and distress.
The pagans say, this can well come about. King Marsile's counsel now has reached its end, and he called forth Clarin of Balaguer, Estamarin and Oudropin his peer, bearded Garlin as well as Priamont, and Marchenet with his uncle Maheu, Junier and Malbienne of Outremer, and Blackandrin as spokesman for them all. These 10 he called from his most wicked band.
My noble lords, go now to Charlemagne at Cordoba, where he invests the town, carrying olive branches in your hand to signify peace and humility. If by your wiles you can achieve this pact, silver and gold in plenty shall be yours, and lands and fiefs, whatever you desire.
The pagans say, this is enough for us. King Marsile, with his counsel at an end, said to his men,
My lords, you will set out, carrying olive branches in your hands, and tell King Charlemagne on my behalf to show me mercy in his own God's name. Then, ere the coming month has run its length, he'll see me with 1,000 trusted men follow him to receive the Christian faith. In love and loyalty take him as Lord. If he wants hostages, these he shall have.
A good pact will be yours.
Marsile commands that 10 white mules be brought, a present from the king of Swatile, bridles with gold, saddles with silver trimmed. These were the mounts the messengers bestrode, who, with their olive branches in their hands, came before Charles, high governor of France. Yet pray to their deceit, do what he may. The emperor, serene and jubilant, has taken Cordoba and razed its walls, toppled its turrets with his catapults, and won rich booty there for all his knights, silver and gold, equipment without price. All pagans in the city have been slain, or else converted to the Christian faith. In a great garden there, the emperor has at his side Roland and Oliver, Samson the Duke, and haughty Anseis. His standard-bearer Geoffrey of Anjou was there, along with Gerin and Gerier, and many others in their company. Full 15,000 of fair France's men. Knights sit on silken cloths and take their ease. Some try their chance on the backgammon board. Others, more wise and older, play at chess, while younger, nimbler men fence for their sport. Beneath a pine, beside a wild rose tree, a chair of state is set, of purest gold. There sits the king, the ruler of fair France. His beard is white, and hoary is his head. Handsome is his frame, his bearing full of pride. No need to point him out, if any ask. The messengers dismounted from their mules to greet him warmly, with a show of love. Blackandrin himself was the first to speak. He hailed the king.
May you be saved by God, whom in his glory we should all adore. Our noble King Marsile sends you this word. He has long sought the way salvation lies, and now will give much of his wealth to you. Lions he offers, bears, leashes of hounds, 700 camels and 1,000 hawks, silver and gold borne by 400 mules, and 50 cartloads you may drive away. So many bezants struck from purest gold that you may pay your mercenaries well. Your stay in this land has been long enough, and now you should go back to Aix in France. Thither my lord says he will follow you.
The emperor raises his hands to God, and with bowed head he thinks upon these things. The emperor remained with lowered head, for he was never hasty with his speech. It was his wont to linger with his words. When he looked up, fierce pride was in his face. To the envoys he said,
Your speech is fair, yet King Marsile is my sworn enemy, and these words you have come to utter here, how far can I be sure that they are true?
He'll offer hostages. 10, 15, 20 of them shall be yours. My own son's life be pledged along with theirs, and others, I assure you, nobler still. To your high palace, where you celebrate the great feast of St. Michael du Paril, my suzerain has vowed to follow you. And in your bath that are God's handiwork, it is his wish to take the Christian faith.
Then he may yet be saved.
Fair was the evening, and the sun was bright. Charles has the 10 mules led into a stall. In the great garden there is raised a tent, where the king lodges the 10 messengers, and has 12 serving men attend them well. They passed the night there till the clear day broke. The emperor rose at an early hour. After he had heard matins and mass, he went to take his place beneath a pine, and to conclude his council called his lords. His whole reliance is on those of France. The emperor has gone beneath a pine, and to conclude his council called his lords, Duke Ogier, and Archbishop Turpin too, Richard the Old and his nephew Henri, noble Count Asselin from Gascony, Tedbald of Reims, and his cousin Milon were there, along with Gerrier and Gerin. Count Roland came to join the company, and so did valiant, noble Oliver. More than 1,000 Franks from France are there. Ganelon, too, who wrought the treachery. And now the ill-starred council has begun. Said the emperor,
My lords and barons, King Marsil has sent messengers to me, offering great abundance of his wealth. Bears, lions, leash-trained hounds, and camels too. 700, with 1,000 hawks to molt. 400 mules bearing Arabian gold, and with all this, 50 cartloads beside. But he requires me to return to France. Then he will follow to my court at Aix, there to receive our own more potent faith. Once Christian, he will hold his lands from me, but what his purpose is, I cannot tell.
The Frenchmen say,
We should beware. Beware.
The emperor has finished speaking now. Count Roland makes his opposition plain by standing up to put the other case. He said to Charles,
Never believe Marsil. We came to Spain full 7 years ago, and I won for you Nople and Comible. I took Valterra and the land of Pine, and Balaguer, Tudela, and Seville. There King Marsil performed great treachery. He sent you 15 of his Saracens, each of them carrying an olive branch, and they announced to you these self-same words. So you held a full council with your Franks, and, on their somewhat foolhardy advice, to the pagan you sent 2 of your counts. One was Bassan, the other was Basile. He took their heads in the hills by Haltil. Carry the war to him as you've begun. To Saragossa lead your gathered host, and if you must, besiege it all your life to wreak revenge for those the villain slew.
The emperor remained with downcast eyes, stroking his beard and smoothing his moustache, but gave his nephew neither yea or nay. The French keep silent, all but Ganelon. He rises to his feet, steps before Charles, and full of pride starts to address the king.
Woe betide you should you believe a rogue, or me, or any man save for your good. When King Marsil proposes this to you, that hands folded in yours he will become your vassal, holding all of Spain in fee, and then will take the faith that we uphold. The man who asks you to reject these terms has little care, sire, but what death we die. Arrogant talk is best thrust from our minds. Let us ignore the fools and heed the wise.
When he has finished speaking, Namus steps forth, than whom no better vassal is in court, and he says to the king,
You have well heard the answer given by Count Ganelon. There's wisdom in it if you pay it heed. For King Marsil is vanquished in the war, and you have captured all his fortresses. His walls you shattered with your catapults, burnt down his citadels, conquered his men. When he sends now to beg mercy of you, to wreak more havoc on him would be wrong. Since he will pledge his word with hostages, this great campaign should now have run its course.
The Frenchmen say, The Duke has spoken well.
My lords and barons, whom then shall we send to treat in Saragossa with Marsil?
I'll go with your consent. Entrust to me at once the staff and glove.
You're a wise counselor. And so I vow by my mustache and beard that never will you go so far from me. Go and sit down. No one has summoned you. My lords and barons, whom then can we send to Saragossa and the Saracen?
Roland replies,
I can well go myself.
No, you shall not.
retorts Count Oliver.
You are so fiercely proud and violent, I'd be afraid you would soon come to blows.
But if the king should wish it, I can go.
Be silent, both of you, for you shall not set out there, nor shall he. And by this beard you see white on my breast, if the 12 peers be named, then woe betide.
The French, confounded, utter not a word. Turpin of Reims got up from where he sat, and thus addressed the king.
Let your Franks be. You have been in this land for 7 years, and they have suffered much hardship and stress. Bestow the staff and glove, sire, upon me, and I'll go to the Spanish Saracen so as to see what sort of face he shows.
The emperor's reply is full of wrath.
Go sit you down on that white silken cloth, and say no more, except at my command. My noble knights, choose me a baron now from my domain, fitted to bear my message to Marsile,
said Roland.
Send my stepsire, Ganelon.
The Frenchmen say,
Yes, he can do it well.
You'll send none wiser should you turn him down.
At this Count Ganelon was greatly vexed. From off his back flung his great marten furs, and in his silken tunic stood erect. His eyes flashed out from his proud countenance. His breast was broad, and noble was his frame, so handsome that to him all eyes were drawn. He said to Roland,
Fool, what ravings this? All men well know I am your stepfather, yet you propose that I go to Marsile? If God should grant that I come back from there, then I shall kindle such a feud with you as shall not lapse in all your living days.
What foolish arrogance! Everyone knows I am not moved by threats. But on this mission, a wise man should go. If the king wishes, I'll go in your stead.
You'll never go for me. You're not my vassal, nor am I your lord. Charles orders me to act on his behalf. To Saragossa and Marsile I'll go. Yet I shall find some pretty trick to play before my bitter anger is appeased.
When Roland heard him, he began to laugh. When Ganelon sees Roland laugh at him, he grows so grim he almost bursts with rage, and for a little would have lost his wits. He tells the Count,
I have no love for you have falsely nominated me. Just Emperor, I stand before you here, fully prepared to obey your command. To Saragossa I know I must go, a place from which there can be no return. Think of this first. Your sister is my wife. Her son and mine fairer there cannot be. Baldwin will be a man of worth. To him I leave my honors and my fiefs. Protect him well. I'll not see him again.
Your heart is much too soft. Since I command it, you must needs depart. Stand forth now, Ganelon, and here receive the glove and staff from me. You heard full well. The Franks have chosen you.
Sire, this is Roland's work, and I'll not love him all my living days, nor, since he is his comrade, Oliver, nor the 12 peers, since they're so fond of him. Here in your sight, sire, I defy them all!
You are too racked with rage, yet needs must go, since this is my command.
Though I may go, no safeguard will be mine. Basile had none, nor his brother Bazan.
The Emperor then hands him his right glove. Count Ganelon wished he were far away, and when he went to take it, the glove fell. The French say,
God, what may this signify?
This mission will bring great loss upon us.
Lords, you'll hear more of this. Sire, give me now my leave, since I must go. There's no point in delay.
Go, in Christ's name and in mine.
With his right hand he strove him with the cross, then handed him the letter and the staff. Count Ganelon straight to his lodging goes, and there makes ready his accoutrements. The best of his equipment he could find. Golden spurs he fixes at his heels, and at his side he girds Merglais his sword, then mounts on Tachebrun his battle steed. His uncle held the stirrup, Guinemer. You might have seen so many knights weep there, saying to him,
Your valor is foredoomed. So long have you been in the royal court, the noble vassal is recognized by all.
The man who nominated you to go will not be screened or saved by Charlemagne.
Count Roland never should have thought of this, for you are of the highest lineage.
And then they say to him,
Sire, take us too.
Never, by God! Rather than see so many fine knights die, I'll die alone. Lords, you go to fair France. Bear greetings to my wife on my behalf, to Pinabel, my firm friend and my peer, to my son Baldwin, too, whom you know well, and shall support and honor as your lord.
He takes the road and starts upon his way. Ganelon rode beneath tall olive trees, and joined up with the pagan messengers, but Blancandrin lingered behind with him, and they exchanged many a wily word.
Charles is a wondrous man. Apulia and Calabria he's conquered, and passed over the salt sea to England to obtain St. Peter's dues. What does he want here, in our land, from us?
This is his way. No man will ever live to vie with him.
Franks are most noble men, but by their dukes and counts great harm is done. When to their lords they offer such advice as racks and ruins him, and others too.
No man, I think, acts so but Roland, who shall pay for it one day. Yesterday morning Charles sat in the shade, when in his coat of mail his nephew came, fresh back from plundering by Carcassonne, and in his hand a crimson apple lay. Said Roland to his uncle, "Here, fair lord, I offer you the crowns of all the kings." His arrogance must soon have its reward, when every single day he toys with death. Should someone slay him, true peace would be ours.
Roland's a very plague, wanting to make all peoples come to heel, and laying claim to every single land. With whose aid does he think to do so much?
That of the men of France. They'll never fail him, for they love him so. And so much gold and silver he bestows, mules, charger, arms and armors, silken cloths. The emperor himself has all he wants. Through him he'll reign right to the Orient.
So Ganelon and Blancandrin rode on, until at last they pledged a common vow to seek a way to compass Roland's death. To Saragossa by highways and low they rode, dismounting underneath a yew. A pine tree casts its shade upon a throne draped with a silk from Alexandria. There sat the king who held all Spain in thrall, around him 20,000 Saracens, not one of them breathing a single word, for so intent were they to hear the news. Behold now Ganelon and Blancandrin. Blancandrin came to stand before Marsile, and in his hand clasping Count Ganelon's, addressed the king.
Mahomet guard you well. Apollyon, too, whose holy faith we hold. To Charles we went, your message duly gave, and he raised both his hands toward the sky to praise his God. He gave no more reply, but sends this noble baron to you here, a man of France who holds great wealth and power. From him you'll hear if it be peace or not.
Let him speak, and we'll attend.
So, weighing well his words, Count Ganelon, with utmost prudence, now began to speak, as one who has great cunning in the art. He hailed the king.
May you be saved by God, whom in his glory we should all adore. This is noble Charlemagne's demand, that you receive the holy Christian faith. Then he will give you half of Spain in fee. But if to these terms you will not agree, he'll seize you forcibly, bind you in chains to have you haled off to his seat at Aix, where final judgment will be passed on you, and you shall perish in disgrace and shame.
King Marsile started up in great alarm, plucked up a javelin feathered with gold to strike him down, had he not been restrained. From King Marsile's face all the colour drained. Gripping his weapon's shaft, he brandished it. At this, Ganelon's hand went to his sword. Jerking it from its sheath an inch or two, he spoke to it.
How fair and bright you are, and while I carry you in royal court, the Emperor of France shall never say that I alone died in this foreign land, before the best men there had paid your price.
The pagans say,
This quarrel must be
quelled. At all the leading Saracens' behest, Marsile sat down once more upon his throne. The Caliph said,
You did us a poor turn with your attempt to strike the man from France. You should have paid good heed and heard him out.
My lord, this I must bear. Yet I'd not fail for all the gold God made, not for such wealth as this whole land contains, to tell him, if this much I am allowed, what Charles the mighty king demands of him. Through me demands from his most mortal foe.
Around his shoulders is a sable cloak, covered with silk from Alexandria. That he flings off, and Blancandrin takes up. To lay aside his sword he has no thought, but in his right hand grips its gilded hilt. the pagans say.
A noble knight is this.
Ganelon took a step towards the king and said to him,
Your wrath leads you astray, for the desire of Charles who governs France is that you should receive the Christian faith. 1/2 of Spain he'll give you as your fief. Roland his nephew shall the other hold. Puffed up partner, this to share the land. But if to these terms you will not agree, in Saragossa he'll lay siege to you, and seize you forcibly, bind you in chains to have you haled straight to his seat at Aix. You'll have no palfrey then, no battle steed, no mule or hinny upon which to ride, for on a wretched pack-horse you'll be flung. Once there you'll be condemned and lose your head. Here is the letter from our emperor.
He places it in the pagan's right hand. Marsile had lost all colour in his rage. He breaks the seal and casts the wax away, looks at the letter, sees the written terms.
Charles, who holds France in sway, demands of me that I should bear in mind his grief and wrath over Bassin and his brother Basile, whose heads I took in the hills of Altil. And if I wish now to redeem my life, I must send him my uncle, the Caliph. Otherwise I shall forfeit all his love.
Then Marsile's son spoke, and addressed the king.
Sheer madness are the words Ganelon speaks. He's gone so far he has no right to live. Give him to me for justice to be done.
At this Ganelon brandished his drawn sword, went to the pine, and set his back to it. Into the garden now the king has gone, taking with him the best among his men, and with them came the white-haired Blancandrin, and Jufaret, who was his son and heir, and the Caliph, his loyal uncle, too. Said Blancandrin,
Summon the Frenchman here. To our advantage he's pledged me his word.
Bring him to us yourself.
By the fingers of Ganelon's right hand he led him to the garden and the king, and there they work the wicked treason out.
Worthy Sir Ganelon, I acted somewhat rashly towards you, and almost struck you, so great was my wrath. But with these sable furs I make amends. 500 pounds in gold they're worth, and more. Well, you'll be paid before tomorrow night.
I'll not refuse, and may God please to give you recompense.
Ganelon, you have my word that I am of a mind to love you well. Let me now hear you tell of Charlemagne. He's very old, and his lifespan is spent, more than 200 years, as I believe. And he had wandered through so many lands, and on his buckler bore so many blows, brought so many rich kings to beggary. When will he ever give up his campaigns?
That is not Charles' way. There is no man who sees and knows him well, but vows the valor of the emperor. Much as I vaunt his praise and worth to you, more good he is, his honor greater still. Who could describe his excellence in words? God makes him shine with such nobility, he'd rather die than fail his company.
I have to marvel much at Charlemagne, who is white-haired and old. He's seen, I think, more than 200 years, and toiled his way across so many lands, suffered so many blows from lance and spear, brought so many rich kings to beggary. When will he ever give up his campaigns?
Not while his nephew lives, a knight unequalled under heaven's vault. Valiant is his companion Oliver, and the 12 peers who are so loved by Charles form his vanguard with 20,000 knights. With this security, Charles fears no man.
I am much amazed at the white-haired and hoary Charlemagne. He's seen, I think, over 200 years, carried his conquest through so many lands, suffered so many blows from good sharp spears, slain so many rich kings conquered in war. When will he ever cease from his campaign?
Never while Roland lives. A knight unmatched from here to Orient. Valiant is his companion Oliver, and the 12 peers so beloved by Charles form his vanguard with 20,000 Franks. Secure as this, Charles fears no man alive.
Worthy Sir Ganelon, such men have I, better you'd never see. I can command 400,000 knights. With them can I engage Charles and the French.
The time's not ripe. You'd lose vast numbers of your Saracens. Leave folly and let wisdom be your guide. Bestow so much wealth on the emperor that every Frenchman marvels at the sight. For 20 hostages that you will send, the king will make his way back to fair France, leaving behind him his rear guard. In its ranks will be his nephew, Count Roland, I think, and with him valiant, courtly Oliver. Then if you heed my words, the counts are dead. Charles' great arrogance will cease to be. Never again he'll seek to war with you.
Worthy Sir Ganelon, in what way can I compass Roland's death?
I can well tell you how. The king will be at the main pass at seas, and will have left his rear guard at his back, with Roland his nephew, the mighty count, and Oliver, in whom he so much trusts, and banded with them 20,000 Franks. 100,000 of your pagans send, so a first battle may be joined with them. Broken and bruised the men of France will be. At the same time your slaughter will be great. But then you must join battle once again. Roland will not escape from both these fights. After so fine a feat of chivalry, from further war you will henceforth be free. If Roland's death could there be brought about, with him Charles would have lost his own right arm, and so the vast armies would fight no more. Never again Charles gathers so much might. Our fatherland would then be left in peace.
Marsile heard this, and kissed him on his cheek. Then they begin to fetch his treasure forth.
Why should we parley more? No good comes from advice not acted on. Roland's betrayal you should pledge to me.
Just as you will.
Upon the relics of his sword Merglais, he swore the treason, and succumbed to sin. There was a throne there, all of ivory. Marsile gave orders that a book be brought, telling Mahomet's law and Tervagant's, and then the Spanish Saracen took oath that if in the rear guard Roland is found, he will attack him there with all his men, and if he can, accomplish his sure end. Ganelon says,
So may your will be done.
Then there stepped forth a pagan, Val de Brun, who came to stand before Marsile the king. Laughing aloud, he said to Ganelon,
Here, take my sword. None better can be found. 1,000 gold man-guns are at its hilt. Fair sir, in friendship's name I give it you if you will help us, so that we may find the rear guard, with Lord Roland at its head.
It shall be done.
They kiss each other then, on face and chin. And then there came a pagan, Clémorin, laughing aloud to Ganelon, he said,
Here, take my helm. Better was never seen. Then you shall help us, so that we may find how to contrive the Marquis Roland's shame.
It shall be done.
They kissed each other then, on mouth and face. Then there stepped forward Bramimond, the queen.
I love you well, sir, since my lord and his men esteem you so. To your wife I will send 2 necklaces, heavy with gold, jacinths, and amethysts. They are worth more than all the wealth of Rome. Your emperor has never seen their like.
He took them both, and thrust them in his boot. The king calls forth his treasurer, Malduis.
Have you made ready the tribute for Charles?
Yes, sire, in plenty too. Silver and gold, 700 camel-loads, and 20 hostages, noblest of men.
By the shoulder Marsile took Ganelon.
You are indeed noble and wise. By that faith where you think salvation lies, take care never to turn your heart from us. Then you shall have abundance of my wealth, 10 mules bearing Arabia's finest gold, and such a gift I'll make you every year. Now of this mighty city take the keys, and to King Charles hand over its great wealth. Then to the rear guard name Roland for me. If I find him in some defile or pass, against him I shall battle to the death.
I think I wait too long.
Then, mounting, he began the journey back. The emperor is on his homeward way, and he has reached the citadel of Galn that Count Roland has captured and destroyed. 100 years it would lie desolate. The king awaits some news of Ganelon, and of the truce with the great land of Spain. As morning breaks and the clear dawn appears, Count Ganelon arrives back at the camp. The emperor arose at morning light, attended mass, and heard the matins through. On the green grass before his tent he stood. Roland was there, and noble Oliver, with them Duke Namus and many others too. Then came the wicked, perjured Ganelon, and with great cunning he began to speak, greeting the king.
God save you, sire, and from Saragossa I bring you the keys. And back with me I've brought great store of wealth, and 20 hostages, so guard them well. And noble King Marsile sends word to you that for the caliph he is not to blame. For with my eyes 400,000 men I saw in hauberks, armed, some with helms laced, and girt with swords with gold, enamelled hilts, escorting him away, down to the sea. They flee from Marsile, for they will not take the Christian faith, nor keep it as their own. But ere they had sailed full 4 leagues away, a storm and tempest pounced upon them all. There they were drowned, none will you ever see, nor him whom, had he lived, I should have brought. As for the pagan king, sire, know for sure that you will not see this next month pass by, but he will follow you to France's realm, and will receive the faith that you profess, and with joined hands take vassalage from you, to hold the Spanish kingdom in your fee.
Almighty God be praised! You have done well, and shall have rich reward.
1,000 bugle calls ring through the host. The Franks strike camp, load their pack animals, and take the road together for fair France. Charlemagne has laid waste the land of Spain, captured its castles, forced its citadels. The king now says his war is at an end, and back to fair France rides the emperor. Count Roland bound the standard to his lance, and on a hill raised it against the sky. The Franks pitch camp throughout the countryside, while through the broad valleys the pagans ride, well mounted, with their hauberks on their backs, their helmets laced and swords girt by their sides, with shields hung at their necks and lances decked. High in the hills they halted in a wood. 400,000 wait the break of day. O God, what grief the French know not of this. The day has passed, and the dark night has come. Charles lies asleep, the mighty emperor. He dreamed he was at the main pass at seas, and in his fist he gripped his ashen lance. But Ganelon the count seized it from him, so violently waved and brandished it, it flies in splinters to the sky above. But Charles sleeps soundly on, and does not wake. After this vision, he dreamed once again. He was in France, at his chapel at Aix, when a ferocious bear bit his right arm. From the Ardennes he saw a leopard come, to launch upon him a most fierce attack. Then from within the hall there came a hound, bounding and leaping up to Charlemagne. First from the bear it hacks off the right ear, then with the leopard furiously fights. This is a mighty contest, the French say, and cannot tell which one will win the day. But Charles sleeps soundly on, and does not wake. The night has passed, and the bright dawn appears. 1,000 bugle calls ring through the host. The emperor rides proudly with his men.
My noble lords, see here the passes and narrow ways. Appoint for me the rear guard's leader now.
Ganelon replies,
My stepson Roland, you have no baron valorous as he.
When the king heard, anger was in his eyes.
You are a living fiend from hell, and mortal madness burns your very bones. Who, then, shall go before me in the van?
Ogier of Denmark. For this command you have no better, lord.
Count Roland, when he heard his name announced, began to speak, just as a true knight should.
Sir Stepfather, you whom I should hold dear, have had the rear guard placed in my command. Charles, King of France, shall suffer no loss there. No palfrey, if I know of it. No steed, no mule or hinny that is fit to ride. No single sumpter or pack-horse he'll lose that has not first been paid for by the sword.
'Tis true, as well I know.
When Roland heard the rear guard judged to him, to his stepfather he spoke wrathful words.
Ah, wicked, wretched, and ignoble man! Do you think I should let the glove fall down, as when in front of Charles you dropped the staff? Just Emperor, give me the bow that you held in your grasp. I warrant I'll not suffer the reproach of letting it fall down like Ganelon when he received the staff in his right hand.
At this the emperor bowed down his head, stroking his beard and twisting his moustache. He could not hold the tears back from his eyes. When these things had been spoken, Nemus stepped forth, than whom no better vassal was in court, and to the king he said,
You have well heard Count Roland, who is bitterly enraged. The rearguard has been judged to his command. No lord of yours will ever alter that. Give him the bow that you hold ready strung, and find the means to lend him full support.
The king gives it, and Roland takes it up.
Fair nephew, sir, as you know very well, half of my army I will leave with you. Keep it, for this is your security.
Then said the Count,
I shall do no such thing. God curse me if I fail my family. I shall keep 20,000 valiant Franks, cross through the passes in full confidence, and never while I live fear any man.
Count Roland has mounted upon his steed. To him came his companion Oliver. Gerin came with the noble Count Gerrier, and up came Othon, then with Berengier, and Astor came, with him proud Anseis, and old Gerard of Roussillon came there, as well as Duke Galfier, a man of power. Said the Archbishop,
I'll go by my head.
And I with you.
Count Gautier said at once,
I'm Roland's man, and must not let him down.
Between them they choose 20,000 knights. Count Roland called upon Gautier de Lume.
Take from our Franks of France 1,000 men, and with them hold the defiles and the heights. The Emperor must lose no single man.
Gautier replies,
I'll do it well for you.
And then with 1,000 French, the sons of France, Gautier patrols the defiles and the heights, and no bad news will bring him down again before 700 of their swords are drawn. King Almaris of the realm of Belfair waged bitter battle with them on that day. High are the hills, and shadowy the vales. The crags are dark, the defiles sinister. That day the Frenchmen spent in great distress. Their march is heard for 15 leagues around. Then, when they reached their mighty fatherland, they looked on Gascony, their lord's domain. And they recalled their honours and their fiefs, thought of the maidens and their noble wives. Not one of them from pity does not weep. Charles grieves more bitterly than all the rest to leave his nephew in the Spanish pass. Assailed by pity, he can only weep. The 12 peers have remained behind in Spain, with 20,000 Frenchmen in their force. They have no fear, no terror to face death, and now the Emperor is back in France, hiding his anguished face beneath his cloak. Beside him, at his shoulder, rides Duke Namus, who asks the king,
Why are you so downcast?
It is not right to ask. My grief is such I cannot hold it back. For France will be destroyed by Ganelon. Last night an angel warned me in a dream. My lance I saw him shatter in my hands. My nephew now he names for the rear guard, and I leave him behind on foreign soil. God, for his loss no man could compensate.
Great Charlemagne cannot hold back his tears. 100,000 Franks feel grief for him, and awful dread and fear for Roland's fate. He is betrayed by wicked Ganelon, who from the pagan king received great gifts, silver and gold, silk cloths and rich brocades, horses and mules, camels and lions too. Marsile now summons his high lords of Spain.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
His counts and viscounts, dukes and almanzors, his emirs and noble compters' sons. 400,000 gather in 3 days. In Saragossa he calls out his drums. They raise Mahomet in the highest tower, and every pagan prays and worships him. And then they ride, each vying in his zeal, out through Cerdanya's valleys and high hills. They spied the ensigns of the men of France. The 12 companions, with their rear guard ranged, will join with them in battle and not flinch. The nephew of Marsile, thrust to the fore, astride a mule he goaded with a stick, and to his uncle, laughing out loud, he said,
Fair king, sire, I have served you many years, and for you suffered hardship and distress, fighting victoriously in the field. Grant me this boon, to strike at Roland first. Then with my sharp spear I will lay him low, and if Mahomet will shield me from harm, I shall redeem each piece of land in Spain, from its high passes right to Durston. Charles will be weary, his Franks recreant. You will be free of war your whole life long.
At this, King Marsil handed him his glove. In his hands Marsil's nephew grasps the glove, and to his uncle speaks these prideful words.
Fair king, sire, a fine gift you've granted me. Choose for me 12 among your highest lords, and with the 12 companions I will fight.
Malpremy of Brigant.
I'll go seek Roland in Roncevaux, and if I find him, bring him to his knees.
The Emir of Bellegarde.
The French shall die in dolor and disgrace.
Sir Almanzor of Maurienne.
If I find Roland, I pledge him his death.
Turgis of Turtelos.
See in my hand my long and trusty sword. This I shall set against his Durodal.
Escremy of Valenterne.
The French will die, and France will be bereft.
Estragans and Estramaris.
We shall assail Roland and Oliver. We will present you with the Emperor.
Marguerite of Seville.
Within a year France will be seized, and we may rest within the town of Saint-Denis.
At this the pagan peers gather, all 12, with them 100,000 Saracens, who hasten eagerly to join the fray, and in a pine wood go to don their arms. The pagans put Saracen hauberks on, most of them reinforced with triple mail. They lace the splendid Saragossen helms, gird on their swords wrought of Viana steel, take their fine shields and their spears from Valence, with ganflons of crimson, blue, and white. Then they forsake their palfreys and their mules, mount on their steeds, and ride in close array. Bright was the day, and radiant the sun. All their equipment glitters in its rays. 1,000 bugles sound a flourish forth. Great is the clamour, and the Frenchmen hear. Said Oliver,
Sir comrade, I believe we may do battle with the Saracens.
Roland replies,
And may God grant it so. Our duty bids us stand firm for our king. A man should suffer hardship for his lord, endure great heat and bear with bitter cold, and be prepared to lose both hair and skin. Now let each man take care to deal great blows, so that no song of shame be sung of us. Pagans are wrong and Christians in the right. No bad example shall be set by me.
Oliver stands upon a lofty hill, and to the right looks down a grassy vale, spies there the infidels as they approach. To Roland his companion he then calls,
Coming from Spain, such gleam of arms I see, so many shining hauberks, blazing helms, that for our French they hold great grief in store. This Ganelon the wicked traitor knew, when he named us before the Emperor.
Be silent, Oliver. He is my stepfather, our hill no more.
Oliver has climbed up onto a hill, and now he clearly sees the Spanish realm and the assembled horde of Saracens. Bright shine the golden helms, studded with gems. Bright, too, the shields and saffroned coats of mail, and bright the spears with flying ganflons. The simple tally of the squadrons there he cannot count, so vast their numbers are. And even he is seized with great alarm. He lost no time, but hastened from the hill, came to the French, and gave them their report.
The pagans I have seen, never has any man on earth seen more. The vanguard is 100,000 strong, with shields and gleaming hauberks, helmets laced, on shafts erect the polished spearheads shine. You'll have such battle as has never been. French lords, may God now send his strength to you. Stand stalwart in the field, or taste defeat. The pagans have vast strength, and our Frenchmen beside them seem so few. Friend Roland, I beseech you, sound your horn. Then Charles will hear, the army will turn back.
Should I act like a fool, and lose my fame and honor in fair France? No. I shall strike great blows with Durendal, stain it with gore up to its golden hilt. The pagan knaves shall rue their coming here, for this I pledge. Each one is doomed to die.
Companion Roland, sound your olifant. The king will hear and turn the army back. Charles and his barons will come to our aid.
May it never please God that blame should fall on my kinsfolk through me, or fair France ever lapse in infamy. Rather, I'll strike amain with Durendal, my trusty sword that hangs here at my side, and you will see its blade all stained with gore. Those pagan knaves shall rue their gathering. I pledge you this, they are all marked for death.
Companion Roland, sound your Oliphant, and Charles will hear as he goes through the pass. And then, I pledge, the Franks will turn about.
May God not please that any man alive should urge me so, or have me sound my horn for infidels. Never shall my kinsmen bear that reproach. When I am fighting in the great affray, I'll strike 700 and 1,000 blows. Durendal's steel you shall see stained with gore. Stout are the French, valiantly they will strike. Never shall those from Spain escape their death.
I see no blame in it, for I have seen the Saracens from Spain. They cover both the mountains and the vales, swarming on hillsides and throughout the plains. Huge are the armies of the foreign folk, while we have but a puny company.
I like it better so. May God himself and his angels forbid that through me France's worth should ever wane. I'd rather die than suffer such a shame. Stout blows endear us to the Emperor.
Roland is valiant, Oliver is wise, and both are matchless in their chivalry. When they are armed and mounted on their steeds, for fear of death neither will shun the fray. Excellent are the counts, lofty their speech, the wicked pagans wrathfully ride on. Oliver said,
Roland, just see them all, how close they are with Charles so far away. You did not deign to sound your Oliphant, yet if the king were here, we'd have no harm. Look up towards the passes into Spain. Now you can see what plight the rearguard's in. Its men will never form another one.
Tell no such tale to me. Cursed be the heart that quakes within the breast. We shall stand firm and hold our ground, hewing and hacking there as best we may.
When Roland sees the battle will be joined, lions and leopards show less pride than he. He calls the Frenchman, summons Oliver.
Companion, friend, I pray you, say not so. The Emperor who left his French with us, allotting to us 20,000 men, thought not to find a single coward here. A man should suffer great ills for his lord, endure the bitter cold and bear great heat, and be prepared to lose both flesh and blood. Strike with your lance, and I with Durendal, my trusty sword given me by the king. If I die here, the man who takes it up can say a noble vassal wielded this.
Archbishop Turpin is not far away. Spurring his horse, he gallops up a hill, summons the French, and speaks these solemn words.
My lords and barons, Charles has left us here, and for our king we should in duty die. Lend aid now to maintain the Christian faith. You'll join in battle, as you know full well. Before your eyes you see the Saracens. Say your confessions. For God's mercy, pray. I will absolve you to secure your souls. If you die, blessed martyrs you will be, and have your place on high in paradise.
The French dismount, and to the ground they fall, for the Archbishop's blessing in God's name. As penance he commands that they strike hard. The French rose up again upon their feet, truly absolved, and pardoned for their sins, and signed by the Archbishop with God's cross. At this they mounted on their speedy steeds, in arms and armor fitting for true knights, and with their battle gear all well equipped. Count Roland then called upon Oliver.
Companion, sir, as you are well aware, we have all been betrayed by Ganelon, who has been paid in money, wealth, and gold. The Emperor should take vengeance for us. Marsile, the king, has bartered with our lives, but with our sword strokes he shall have his price.
Roland has ridden to the Spanish pass, on Veillantif, his good swift battle steed, and bearing arms as fine as was his due. His spear the noble knight goes brandishing, turning the tip upwards towards the sky, and there a pure white ganflon is tied, with golden streamers hanging to his hand. Handsome he is, with laughter in his eyes. He rides, with his companion at his heels, Hailed as protector by the men of France, proudly he gazes at the Saracens, but on the French with mild humility. Them he addresses with true courtesy.
My noble lords, go gently, do not haste. On savage slaughter these pagans are bent. Today our booty will be rich and rare, more precious than French king has ever won.
He spoke these words, and then the armies clash. Said Oliver,
I have no time for words. You did not deign to sound your Oliphant, and so of noble Charles there is no trace. For he knows nothing, and no guilt is his, and those men with him are not to be blamed. Ride forward then yourself with all your might. My lords and barons, strive to hold the field, and in God's name I beg you well attend to dealing blows. You'll give and you'll receive. Let's not forget the battle cry of Charles.
Montjoie! Montjoie!
If you had heard them cry aloud, Montjoie! Well, you would call to mind true vassalage. Then they ride on, O God, in such great pride, drive in their spurs to go more quickly still, and so press on to strike their blows. What else? The Saracens were not in dread of them, pagans and Franks. See them now, come to grips. King Marsil had a nephew, Aelroth, who on his own rode at the army's head. He hurls his insults in our Frenchmen's teeth.
You felon French, you'll joust with us today. By your protector you have been betrayed. Mad is the king to leave you in the past. Today fair France shall forfeit its repute, and Charlemagne will lose his own right arm.
When Roland heard him, God, what grief was his! He spurs his steed on to a frantic pace. On the Count drives to strike with all his might. His shield he shatters, and his hauberk rends, cleaves through the breast and shivers all his bones, sunders in twain the spine within his back. So with his spear he puts his soul to flight. He thrusts well home and topples down his foe, hurls him at lance's length dead from his horse, with his neck broken in two equal parts. Still he will not forbear to rail him.
Charles is not mad, you blackest-hearted rogue, and never was a friend of treachery. Gallant he was to leave us in the pass. Fair France shall not today lose its repute. Have at them, Franks, for this first blow is ours. We're in the right, these villains in the wrong.
A duke was there whose name was Falseron, and he was brother to Marsil the king. As foul a felon as is found on earth, so broad his brow was spread between his eyes, that one could measure there a full half-foot. Much grieved was he to see his nephew slain. He leaves the safety of the serried throng to shout the war-cry of the Saracens, at the Frenchmen hurl his mocking words.
Fair France shall lose its honor on this day.
Oliver hears him and is filled with wrath. He pricks his charger with his gilded spurs, and goes to strike him as a baron should. His shield he shatters, and his hauberk rives, plunges his pennant streamers in his breast, slays and unsaddles him at lance's length. Down on the ground he sees the scoundrel lie, and he addresses him with these proud words.
Your menaces, you rogue, mean naught to me. Have at them, Franks, for we'll vanquish them.
He shouts,
Montjoie!
The battle cry of Charles. A king there is, whose name is Corsiblix. He is a Berber from a foreign land, and he calls to the other Saracens.
This battle can be won by us with ease, for of the Frenchmen there are very few. Those who are here we should hold in contempt. Not one of them is to be spared for Charles. This is the day when they all needs must die.
Archbishop Turpin clearly hears these words. No man on earth has roused his hatred so. He pricks his horse with his spurs of pure gold, and with great vigor goes to strike at him. His shield he shatters, and his hauberk splits, and through his body drives his mighty spear. He thrusts well home, and topples his foe dead. At lance's length hurls his corpse to the ground. He looks behind, and sees the villain sprawl, and he will not forbear to call to him.
Ignoble pagan, you have told a lie, for Charles my lord will always ward us well. And since our Frenchmen have no mind to flee, all your companions we shall force to stay. I've news for you. You all must suffer death. Have at them, Franks. Let none of you relent. for this first blow is ours, thanks be to God. Montjoie!
Oliver rides onward through the fray. His shaft is broken, just a stump remains. He goes to strike a Saracen, Melon, shatters his shield with gold and flowers worked. Both of his eyes he smites out of his head, and all his brains fall down beneath his feet. He fells him dead, 700 others too, and then he slew Turgis and Estrogos. His shaft splinters and breaks right to his fist. And Roland said,
Companion, what is this? In such a battle I don't care for sticks, for here iron and steel should show their worth. Where then's your sword that you call Haldeclair, with crystal pommel and its hilt of gold?
I could not draw it, for I was much too busy striking blows.
Sir Oliver has drawn his trusty sword, as his companion Roland had required, and shown him it performing knightly work. A pagan there, Justin of Valferie, he strikes, and down the middle splits his head. His body in its saffroned bairnie cleaves, slices the saddle rich with gold and gems, and through the sheen cuts his battle steed, strikes him dead in the meadow at his feet. And Roland said,
This is the friend I know. Such blows endear us to the Emperor.
Bonjour!
The battle rages fiercer still. Pagans and Franks exchange their fearful blows. Some strike, some seek to defend themselves. So many blood-stained shafts are shattered there. So many gonfalons and standards rent. So many good young Frenchmen end their days, never to see mothers and wives again, nor their French comrades waiting in the pass. Though Charlemagne laments and weeps for them, to what avail? No succor will be theirs. The battle rages terrible and grim. Roland and Oliver deal doughty blows. More than 1,000 the archbishop strikes. The 12 peers are not backward in the fight, and all the Frenchmen strike with one accord. Hundreds and thousands of the pagans die. Those who spurn flight have no escape from death, but must perforce surrender up their lives. The Frenchmen there lose their best champions. They'll not see fathers and kinsfolk again. No Charlemagne, who waits there in the pass. In France a wondrous tumult fills the air. Winds blow in tempests, and the thunder peals, while rain and hailstones hurtle from the sky, and thunderbolts times without number fly. And if the truth be told, the whole earth quakes. Right from St. Michael du Peril to Sens, from Besançon to the port of Vicente, there is no dwelling whose walls do not split. Then, high at noon, a great darkness descends. No light is seen, save when the heavens rend. Terror grips every man who sees these things, and many say, This is the latter end. The judgment day is surely now at hand. Though they know not, their words are false, for this is the great agony for Roland's death. The French have struck with vigor and stout hearts. The pagans are in many thousands slain. Scarce 2 of their 100,000s remain. Said the archbishop,
Valiant are our men. No one on earth commands better than them. And in the Frankish annals we may read of the great valor of our emperor.
They go about the field seeking their dead, shedding their tears for grief and pity's sake, mourning their kinsmen with a heartfelt love. With his main army King Marsil appears. Up through a valley Marsil makes his way, with the great army gathered at his call in 20 squadrons detailed by the king. Bright shine their helms with jewels set in gold, bright too their shields and saffroned burnies gleam. 7,000 bugles sound aloud the charge. Great is the clamour through the countryside.
Companion Oliver, friend, the villain Ganelon has sworn our death, and now his treason cannot be concealed. Mighty revenge the Emperor will wreak. A grim and bitter battle we shall have, such as no man has ever seen engaged. There I shall strike with Durandal my sword, and you, companion, strike with Alteclair. These we have wielded on so many fields and gained so many battles with their aid. No man should sing a mocking song of them.
Marsil sees the great slaughter of his men, and has his trumpets and his horns sound forth. Then rides on with his vast assembled host. At its head rides a Saracen, Abisme. None was more wicked in the royal band, evil his ways, and full of felony. God he rejects, our blessed Mary's son, and melted pitch is not blacker than he. Treason and murder more he cherishes than all the gold found in Galicia. No man has ever seen him laugh or play, but he is bold and valiant in the fray, and for this loved by wicked King Marsil. He bears a dragon to rally his men, but the archbishop had no love for him, and when he saw him, only wished to strike, and to himself under his breath he said,
"This Saracen seems a great heretic. It were as well for me to strike him dead. Cowards and cowardice are not for me."
The archbishop opened the affray. Astride his horse he once took from Grosai, who was a king he had in Denmark slain. It was a mettlesome and speedy steed, flat in the leg, with hooves well hollowed out, broad in the crupper and short in the haunch, long in the flank, and with a good high back. Its mane was yellow, and its tail was white. Its ears were small upon its tawny head. There is no beast that it could not outstrip. With what great valor the archbishop spurs, and eagerly goes to attack Abisme, striking a wondrous blow upon his shield. Jewels were there, topazes, amethysts, bright gemstones, and carbuncles, all ablaze. A demon gave it him in Valmatas, sending it by the emir Galaf's hand. When Turpin had struck it with all his might, it was not worth, I think, a penny piece. Right through the body he pierces his foe, and drops him dead upon some open ground. The Frenchmen see so many pagans there on every side, covering the whole field. Often they beg Roland and Oliver, and the 12 peers to be their shield and stay. Then the archbishop spoke his mind to them.
"My noble lords, think no unworthy thoughts. In God's name I implore you, do not flee, and let no worthy man sing ill of you. Far better is it that we fight and die, for we are promised that our end is near. Tomorrow will not see us still alive. But of one thing assurance can I give. Open for you is blessed paradise, and with the innocents you'll take your seat."
The Franks at these words are so full of joy that every one of them cries out,
"Bonjour!"
Count Roland gripped his sword, dripping in gore. He feels his own heart bursting with great grief. To the pagan he said,
God give you woe. You've slain a man for whom I claim high price.
He spurs his steed on to a fiery pace. For gain or loss he clashes with his foe. Gallant was Grandouin, and a valiant man, both stalwart and courageous in the fight. He came upon Roland full in his path, and though he'd never seen him, knew him well by his proud countenance and handsome frame, both by his bearing and his steady gaze. He cannot but surrender to his fear. He tries to flee, but all to no avail. The count strikes him so violent a blow that to the nasal the whole helm is split. He slices through the nose and mouth and teeth, the trunk and hauberk of Algerian mail, through the gold saddle with its silver bows, and deeply down into the charger's back, rider and steed, he slew beyond recall. Mighty and marvelous is the affray. The Frenchmen strike amain with burnished spears. There such dire human grief you might have seen. So many men wounded, bleeding, or slain. The bright blood flows in streams on the green grass. They lie in heaps, face down, or on their backs. The Saracens cannot endure it more. Whether they will or no, they quit the field, pursued with headlong vigor by the Franks. Count Roland now calls upon Oliver.
Companions, sir, no doubt you would agree that the Archbishop is a splendid knight. None finer, under heaven or on earth. Well he knows how to strike with lance and spear.
The Count replies,
"Come then, and lend him aid."
Hearing these words, the Franks set to again. Hard are the blows and grim the skirmishing, but with the Christians it goes grievously. Had you seen Roland and Oliver hewing and hacking round them with their swords, and the Archbishop striking with his spear? Of those they slew the tally can be told. Records and charters give the reckoning. More than 4,000, so the annals say. The first 4 sallies bring them great success, but from the 5th comes dolour and distress. For then all the knights from France are slain, save a mere 60, who are spared by God. Before they die, they'll sell their lives full dear. Count Roland sees the great loss of his men, and calls to his companion Oliver.
Fair sir, dear comrade, what now in God's name? You see all these fine knights stretched on the ground. Sweet France the fair deserves our pity now. For such noble men it lies bereft. Beloved King, would you were here with us. My brother Oliver, what can we do? In what way can we send this news to him?
I know no way to send. I'd rather die than see us suffer shame.
I shall blow the Oliphant, and Charles will hear as he goes through the pass. And then I pledge the Franks will turn about.
But that would mean disgrace, and bring reproach on all your family. The shame of it would never be lived down. At my suggestion, you'd have none of it. So you'll not do it now on my advice, for if you blow, that's no courageous act. It's true that both our arms are stained with gore.
Many fine blows I've struck. Hard and fierce is our affray. I'll sound the horn, and then King Charles will hear.
No valor is in that. On my advice, comrade, you did not deign. We'd not be harmed now had the king been here, and those men with him are not to be blamed. By this beard of mine, if I see my fair sister Aude again, never more shall you lie within her arms.
Why this bitterness with me?
Comrade, the fault is yours, for prudent valor is not foolishness. Caution is far better than recklessness. The French are dead through your temerity, and our service forever lost to Charles. Had you believed me, my lord would have come. We would have fought and gained the victory, and King Marsil would be captured or slain. We've seen your prowess, Roland, to our cost, and Charlemagne will no more have our aid. His like will not be seen till Judgment Day. You will die here, and France be put to shame. Today our faithful comradeship will end, in grievous parting, ere the evening falls.
Their quarrel came to the archbishop's ears. He pricked his pure gold spurs into his steed, and came to them to utter this rebuke.
Roland, good sir, and you, Sir Oliver, I beg you, in God's name, cease your dispute. To sound the horn could not avail us now, and yet it is best that it should be done. Let the king come. Our deaths he may avenge. The men of Spain must not go glad away. When they are here, our Frenchmen will dismount and find our mangled bodies void of life. On biers they'll lift us onto sumpters' backs. In grief and pity they will weep for us, and bury us in churches' hallowed ground, not to be gnawed by wolf or pig or dog.
Your words are wise, my lord.
The Oliphant is set to Roland's lips. He holds it firm and sounds it with great power. High are the hills, and the call carries far. They heard its echoes at full 30 leagues. Charles heard it sound, and all his company.
Our men are doing battle,
said the king, and Ganelon flung back these words at him.
From other lips, great falsehood this would seem.
Count Roland spares no effort and no pains. With agony he sounds his Oliphant. And from his mouth the bright blood gushes forth, and at the temples he has burst his skull. Far flies the sound from the horn in his grasp. Charles hears it as he journeys through the pass. Duke Namus hears it. The Franks all listen too. Then said the king,
I can hear Roland's horn. He never sounded it but in a fight,
said Ganelon.
No battle's being fought. You're grown grizzled and white-haired with age, and yet the words you speak are like a child's. Full well you know Roland's great arrogance. I marvel that God bears it with so much. No play he took without your bidding it. Out from the city burst the Saracens, and Roland the good vassal they attacked. Later with running streams he washed the field, so that you should not see the blood he'd spilt. For a mere hair he'll blow his horn all day, and now he's showing off before his peers. No one on earth dare pick a fight with him. Ride onward then, why do you hesitate? Our fatherland lies very far ahead.
Count Roland's mouth runs red with his own blood, and at the temple he has burst his skull. He sounds the Oliphant with toil and pain. Charles hears it, and his Frenchmen listen too. Then said the king,
How long this horn blast holds?
Duke Namus replies,
A baron's effort, this. I do not doubt in battle he's engaged. betrayed by him who bids you stay your hand. Arm then and shout aloud your battle cry, and go to aid your noble company. You hear full well, Roland is desperate.
The Emperor has had his own horn sound. The Frenchmen all dismount and arm themselves with helms and hauberks and their gilded swords. Fine are their shields, and long and stout their spears, with gonfalons of crimson, white, and blue. Then all the army's barons mount their steeds, and through the pass's length spur on with zest. Not one of them but to his neighbor said, "Should we see Roland while he's still alive, we would deal mighty blows there at his side." To what avail? Too long they have delayed. The day draws on, bright is the evening sky. The arms they carry gleam against the sun. The hauberks and the helms seem all ablaze. The shields, too, with their richly painted flowers, and all the spears and gilded gonfalons. The Emperor rides onward, full of wrath. The Frenchmen full of grief and bitterness. Not one of them but weeps in great distress, and all for Roland's sake are much afraid. The king commands Count Ganelon's arrest, and has him handed to the royal cooks. And to the chief of them, Besgon, he cries,
"This wicked criminal guard well for me. He has wrought treason on my company."
He takes and guards him with 100 knaves, among his scullions both the best and worst. They pluck the hair from his mustache and beard, and each one strikes him 4 times with his fist. And then they drub him well with staves and sticks, and with an iron collar round his neck bind him in fetters just like any bear. Shamefully set on a pack horse's back, he's kept to be delivered up to Charles. High are the hills, and shadowy and vast, the valleys deep, the torrents rushing swift. The bugles sound ahead, and in the rear all make echo to the Oliphant. The Emperor rides onward in his wrath, with the Frenchmen full of bitterness and grief. Not one of them but weeps and loud laments, praying to God that he keep Roland safe, until together they have reached the field. Then they will all strike truly at his side. To what avail? Nothing can help them now. Too long they've tarried to arrive in time. Onward, with mighty rage, rides Charles the King, his white beard lying on his Bearnese breast. Each one of the French barons spurs with zest. No single man but gives vent to his ire, not to be there at Captain Roland's side, as he fights with the Saracens of Spain. With such a wound, I think, his soul scarce stays. But God, what 60 men are in his band! No king or captain ever had their like. Roland looks to the mountains and the steeps, sees there so many men of France lie dead. He mourns them like a true-born knight he is.
My noble lords, may God his mercy show, and grant his paradise to all your souls, and give them rest amid celestial flowers. I never saw better vassals than you. So long you have served me with constancy, and conquered such great lands in Charles's name, the Emperor retained you for your woe. O realm of France, how fair a land you are, laid waste today by such calamity. French lords, on my behalf I see you slain. I cannot shield you or protect you now, so may God help you, who was ever true. Oliver, brother, you I must not fail. From grief I'll die, if from no other blow. Companion, sir, let us set to again.
Count Roland has gone back onto the field, and wielding Durendal strikes valiant blows. Faldrin of Puy he has there split in twain, and with him 24 of the very best. Never will men thirst for his vengeance more. Just as the stag takes flight before the hounds, so before Roland all the pagans flee, said the archbishop.
You do splendid deeds. This is such valor as a knight should show, who bears his arms astride a sterling steed. In battle he should be both strong and fierce, or else 4 penny pieces are worth more. And he should be a cloistered monk instead, and ever after pray for all our sins.
Strike on! No quarter yield!
Hearing these words, the Franks set to once more, but still the Christian losses mount apace. When a man knows no captive will be made, then stout is his defence in such a fray. And so, like lions, the Franks fiercely fight, See now Marsile make his lordly approach. He sits astride his horse he calls Guignon, digs in his spurs, and goes to strike Bevant, who was the lord of Bon and of Dijon. His shield he shatters, and his hauberk rends, and with this single blow he drops him dead. Then he slew both Ivoire and Yvon, along with them Gerard of Roussillon. Count Roland is not very far away. To the pagan he said,
God bring you woe. To slay my comrades was a wicked wrong. For that you'll feel the blow before we part, and know today the name of my good sword.
He goes to strike him like a valiant lord. First his right fist the count has smitten off, and then the head of Girofleux the fair, none other than the son of King Marsile. The pagans cry,
Mahomet, help us now! Our own true gods, give us revenge on Charles!
For he has sent such villains to this land that they will die rather than quit the field. Now let us flee!
Let us flee!
At this 100,000 men make off. They'll not return, whoever calls them back. Yet what does this avail? Marsile is fled, but Marganise, his uncle, is still there. Carthage he holds, Alfrere, and Gamali, and Ethiopia, a land accursed, peopled by black men, whom he holds in fee. Wide are their ears, and broad their noses are. They number more than 50,000 strong. Ferociously and full of wrath they ride. Then call aloud the pagan battle cry.
Our martyrdom is at hand. I know our lives have not now long to run, but only scoundrels will not sell theirs dear. Strike on, my lords, with your fine furbished swords. Not without challenge you must live and die, and never let fair France be shamed by us. When Charles, my lord, has come upon this field, he'll see such slaughter of the Saracens that he'll find 15 dead for one of us, and will not fail to bless us for our deeds.
When Roland looks on the accursed crew, who are far darker than the blackest ink, with nothing white about them save their teeth, then the count says,
Now I can see it plain, that without doubt this day will see us die. Strike, France! Once more I'll lead you to this fray,
said Oliver.
Cursed be the one who lags!
At that the Frenchmen launch a new attack. The pagans see how few the Frenchmen are, then feel relief, and puff themselves with pride. Each says, the emperor is in the wrong. Marganise sits astride a sorrel steed. He pricks it sharply with his golden spurs, and from behind Oliver's back he strikes. He shatters the bright hauberk that he wears, thrusts home the spear that comes out through his breast, then says,
Now you have felt a mighty blow. Charles left you in the passes for your bane, and should not vaunt the wrong he's done to us, for with your loss alone, ours are avenged.
Oliver feels his death blow has been struck, but wielding his bright-bladed Hauteclair, strikes Marganise's golden helm on its point, bursting away the flowers and the gems. His head he slices right to his front teeth, and forcing home his blow, strikes him down dead. And then he said,
Pagan, a curse on you! I don't deny that Charles has suffered loss. But to no dame or woman you might see in your home kingdom, ever will you boast that you have robbed me of a penny piece, or damage wrought to me or any one.
With that, he summons Roland to his aid. Oliver feels his death wound he's received, but never can he take revenge enough. In the great press he strikes his valiant blows, shivering shafts of spears, and bucklers too, cleaving through feet and fists, saddles and sides, to see him hack the limbs from Saracens, pile them upon the earth, corpse upon corpse, would call to mind a very valiant knight. His thought turns to the battle-cry of France, and with a ringing shout,
Montjoie!
he cries, then calls to Roland, his dear friend and peer.
Companion, sir, come and stand at my side. This day will see us part in bitter grief.
Roland sees how the face of Oliver is ashen, livid, colourless and wan, while from his body the bright blood pours forth to fall and splash upon the ground beneath.
God, I know not what to do. Companion, sir, your valour is ill-starred, yet no man evermore will match with you. Alas, fair France, today you will be shorn of your good vassals, stricken and undone. The emperor will have great hurt from this.
These words he speaks, then swoons upon his horse. See Roland now, fainting upon his horse, and Oliver, who is wounded to death. So much he's bled that his eyes are grown dim, and neither near nor far can he see clear, or recognize a single living man. Then, when towards him his companion came, he struck him on his golden jeweled helm, from crown to nasal, cleaving it in two. But to the head the sword did not cut through. At that blow Roland turned to look at him, and in a mild and gentle voice he asked,
Companion, sir, did you intend this stroke? For I am Roland, who loves you so dear, and you have not defied or challenged me.
Now I can hear you speak, but see you not. God keep you in his sight. I have struck you. Forgive me then, I beg.
I have come to no harm. You have my pardon, here and before God.
At this each bows towards the other's breast. See with what love they to their parting come. Oliver feels that death presses him hard. Both his eyes turn upwards in his head. His hearing is quite lost. His sight is gone. He leaves his horse and lies upon the ground, and loud and clear confesses all his sins. And with both his hands joined and to heaven raised, he prays to God to grant him paradise, and gives his blessing to fair France and Charles, and Roland his companion most of all. His helm falls forward. His heart beats no more, and his whole body sinks down to the ground. The Count is dead. He cannot linger more. Then valiant Roland weeps and mourns for him. No greater grieving will you hear on earth. Now Roland sees that his dear friend is dead, lying face downward, prostrate on the earth, and very softly he made his lament.
Companion, sir, your boldness brought you woe. Together we've seen days and years pass by. Neither have you harmed me, nor I wronged you. Now you are dead. Life is but pain for me.
With this, the Marquis fell into a swoon, as he sat there on Veillantif his horse. His pure gold stirrups still hold him secure. This way and that he goes, but cannot fall. Before Roland has found his wits again, or has revived and come round from his swoon, great damage to his cause has come about. The French are dead, and all are lost to him, save the Archbishop and Gautier de Lume. Down from the mountain Gautier has returned, where he had fought the Spaniards long and hard. His men are dead, vanquished by pagan hands. Like it or no, he flees down to the vales, and calls upon Roland to give him aid.
Ah, noble Count, where are you, valiant man? Never have I known fear when you were there. I am Gautier, who vanquished Malguy, the nephew of the old greybeard Drune. My valour's always made me dear to you. My shaft is shattered and my shield pierced through. My hauberk's mail is rent and burst apart. My body wounded by a lance's thrust. My life fails fast, but I have sold it dear.
These words he uttered. Roland heard him speak, spurred on his horse, and galloped up to him. Roland is full of grief and burns with rage, and he begins to strike in the great press, sending a score of Spaniards to their deaths. Gautier slew 6, and the Archbishop 5. Count Roland is a noble warrior, Gautier de Lume is a good stalwart knight, and the Archbishop's valour is well tried. Not one of them will leave the other side. They strike the pagans in the great melee. 1,000 of the Saracens dismount, and 40,000 sit astride their steeds. But I declare they do not dare approach. Instead, they start to hurl lances, spears, darts, shafts, pikes, arrows, and javelins. At their first volley they have slain Gautier. Turpin of Reims has had his shield pierced through, his helmet crushed, a great wound in his head, his hauberk shattered, and the mail torn free. 4 spears have plunged into his body's flesh. Beneath him they have slain his battle steed. Grievous it is when the Archbishop falls. Turpin of Reims finds himself stricken down and smitten through the body by 4 spears. But swiftly he jumps up, this noble man, and seeing Roland there, runs up to him. One word he said.
I am not vanquished yet. No good vassal will yield while he still lives.
He draws Almas, his sword of burnished steel, strikes a full 1,000 blows in the melee. As Charles said afterwards, he spared no man, for round him he had found 400 lie, some of them wounded, others stricken through, and some there were whose heads had been cut off. So say the annals, and one who was there, the noble Gilles, for whom God wonders works. He wrote the record down in Lyons' great church. Who knows not this, scarce knows what did befall. Roland the Count fights on with gallantry, but his whole body burns and bathes in sweat, and in his head a great ache and pain, wherefrom the horn blast his temples are burst. But he would dearly know if Charles will come. He draws the elephant and feebly blows. The emperor stopped when he heard the sound.
My lords, now it goes ill for us. Today Roland my nephew will be lost. From his horn call I know his end is near. If you would be there, ride with all your speed. Blow all the bugles that the army has.
So loud do 60,000 there resound, the mountains ring, and all the vales reply. The pagans hear, for them it is no jest. One to the other say,
Soon Charles is here.
The emperor returns. Hear how the Frenchmen sound their bugle calls.
If Charles does come, great losses will be ours.
Should Roland live, our war will start again, and Spain, our homeland, will be seized from us.
400 gather, with their helmets laced, thinking themselves the best upon the field. On Roland they make grim and fierce attack. For the Count this will be no idle time. Count Roland, when he sees the foe approach, girds himself up, so ardent, strong, and proud. He will not yield to them while life remains. He sits astride the steed called Veillantif. He pricks it well with his spurs of pure gold, and in the thickest press assails them all, with Turpin the archbishop at his side. Count Roland never loved a craven heart, nor a vainglorious or wicked knave, nor any knight not valiant in the fray. To Turpin the archbishop he exclaims,
My lord, I am in saddle, you on foot. So here for love of you I'll take my stand. Together we'll endure both good and ill. I'll not abandon you for any man. Now we'll return the Saracens' attack. The finest blows are those of Durendal.
Let no stroke be spared. Charles is returning to avenge us well.
The pagans say,
Would we were never born! How dire and dread this day has dawned for us! For we've lost our noble lords and peers, and gallant Charles returns with his great host.
Hear the Frenchmen's ringing bugle calls, and the great clamour as they shout, Montjoie! Roland the Count is full of such fierce pride, no man alive will ever vanquish him. Let us just cast at him, then let him be.
And so they hurled their many darts, shafts, lances, spears, and feathered javelins. With these they pierced and shattered Roland's shield, and burst apart and rent his hauberk's mail, and yet his body was not touched by them. Though 30 wounds they made on Veillantif, striking the steed down dead beneath the Count, the pagans turn in flight and leave him there. Count Roland now remains behind on foot. The pagans flee, wrathful and full of woe, and make what haste they can back toward Spain. Count Roland has no means to give them chase, for he has lost his charger Veillantif. Like it or no, he has been left on foot. He went to aid Archbishop Turpin then, unlacing from his head his golden helm, the light and shining hauberk he drew off, and cut in strips the tunic underneath. He put the pieces into his great wound, and in his arms pressing him to his breast, he laid him gently down on the green grass. Then, with great meekness, Roland begged of him,
O noble man, pray give me now leave. Of those companions whom we held so dear, all now are dead. We must not leave them here. I shall go now to seek and pick them out, and here before you lay them side by side,
said the archbishop.
Go and soon return. Thanks be to God, this field is yours and mine.
Roland departs across the field alone, searching about the mountains and the vales. he found the comrades Gerin and Gerier, and there he found Bérangier and Aton. He found Samson as well, and Anseis, and he found old Gerard of Roussillon. The noble lord then took them one by one, and bringing them where the archbishop was, he placed them in a row down at his knees. Now the archbishop cannot hide his tears. Raising his hand, he gives them his benison, and then he says,
Alas for you, my lords! May God in glory take up all your souls to paradise amid celestial flowers. I too shall die in grief, for never more shall I behold the mighty emperor.
Roland departs to scour the field again, and his companion Oliver he finds. He clasps him tightly, close against his breast. To the archbishop comes as best he may, and by the others lays him on a shield. Then the archbishop shrove them with the cross, so ever greater grief and pity grow. Said Roland,
Fair companion Oliver, truly you were the son of Duke Regnier, who held the march of the Vale of Runas, for breaking lances and for piercing shields, for felling haughty folk to their dismay, sustaining with good counsel worthy men, and vanquishing villains to their despair. No better knight is there in any land.
Count Roland, when he sees his peers lie dead, with Oliver, for whom he had such love, is filled with pity and begins to weep, while from his face all trace of colour drains. Such grief was his, he could no longer stand, and helpless he fell swooning to the ground. Said the archbishop,
What woe, Lord, is yours?
When the archbishop had seen Roland swoon, he felt more grief than he had ever known. He reaches out and takes the Oliphant. In Roncevaux there is a running stream. Water he'd fetch for Roland if he could. Falteringly, with feeble steps, he turns, but in his weakness he can walk no more. He has lost so much blood, his strength is gone. Before a man could go an acre's breadth, his heart fails, and he topples on his face. His own death pangs now have him in their grip. Roland the Count recovers from his swoon, climbs to his feet despite his great distress, and then he turns his gaze both up and down, beyond his comrades. There on the green grass he sees the noble baron lying still, the good archbishop, God's servant on earth, who, eyes upturned, confesses all his sins.
Miserere nobis peccata me.
With both his hands joined and to heaven raised, he prays to God to grant him paradise. Turpin is dead. Charles, great warrior, and ever in fierce fray and sermon fine, true champion against the infidel. May God grant him his holy benison. Count Roland sees the archbishop lie there, with all his entrails spilt upon the ground, and his brains gushing forth below his brow. Beneath the collarbone, upon his breast, his hands are crossed, so delicate and white. Roland laments him in the Frankish way.
Ah, noble man, knight of high lineage, to God above I commend you this day. No man will ever serve him with more zeal. Since the apostles, no prophet has lived who won more men for the faith he maintained. May your soul never lack for anything, but find the gates of paradise stand wide.
Now Roland feels that his own death is near, for from his ears his brains are running forth. He prays to God to summon all his peers, himself evokes the angel Gabriel to keep from blame. He took the Oliphant, and seized hold of Durendal his sword, and further than a crossbow's shaft can fly, went toward Spain, into a fallow field, and climbed a hillock. Under a fine tree there stand 4 blocks, each one of marble made. Down on his back he falls on the green grass, and there he swoons, for now his death is nigh. High are the hills, and towering the trees. 4 gleaming marble blocks are standing there. Count Roland, swooning, lies on the green grass. Watching him closely is a Saracen who lies among the others, feigning death. His body and his face is smeared with blood. He jumps up quickly and runs forward now. Handsome he is, and strong, and full of fight. His arrogance to fatal folly leads. He seizes Roland's body and his arms, and says,
Charles's nephew is overcome. Back to Arabia I'll bear this sword.
But as he tugged at it, the Count came to. When Roland feels him take away his sword, his eyes he opens, and he says to him,
You're not, it seems to me, one of our men.
Grasping the elephant, he would not lose. He strikes him on his gilded, jewelled helm, shatters the steel, the skull, and all the head, and from their sockets thrusts out both the eyes. Down at his feet he fells his foeman dead. And then he said,
Foul pagan! How so bold, rightly or wrongly, to lay hands on me? All those who hear of this will think you mad. My Oliphant is split now at his mouth, the crystal and the gold fallen away.
Now Roland finds that all his sight is gone. He struggles to his feet as best he may, and all the colour from his face is fled. Before him stands a dark and swarthy stone. On it he strikes 10 blows in bitter grief. Loud grates the steel, but does not break or breach.
Ah, sweet Mary, help me now. Oh, my good Durendal, alas for you! With life I'll leave my mastery of you. With you I've won such battles in the field. With so many vast lands I've brought to heel, that are now held by hoary bearded Charles. May no man own you who would flee in fight. So fine a vassal wielded you for so long. In blessed France, your like will not be found.
Roland strikes hard on the sardonic stone. Loud grates the steel, but does not break or notch. Then, when he saw he could not shiver it, soft to himself, he started this lament.
Ah, Durendal, how fair and bright you shine, and with what fire you glitter in the sun. Charles once was in the vales of Moréan, when, through an angel he sent from above, God bade him give you to a captain count. The great and noble king girt you on me. With you I conquered Anjou, Brittany. With you I won for him Poitou and Maine, and for him conquered Normandy the free, and overcame Provence and Aquitaine, and the whole of Romagna, Lombardy, and won all Flanders and Bavaria, Burgundy and Apulia and Tyre, Constantinople that he held in fee, and Saxony where he does what he will. With you I won Scotland and Ireland too, and England, which he held as his domain. With you so many lands and realms I've won, that now white-bearded Charles holds in his sway. Sorely I grieve in sorrow for this sword. I'd die to save it from the infidel. Our Father, God above, spare France this shame.
Roland strikes hard upon a swarthy stone, cuts more of it away than I could tell. Loud grates the steel, but does not break or snap. Instead, it flies rebounding to the sky. When the Count sees he cannot shatter it, in soft tones to himself he makes lament.
Ah, Durendal, holy and fair you are. Relics in plenty fill your gilded hilt. St. Peter's tooth, and some of St. Basile's blood. Hairs from the head of my lord Saint Denis, part of a garment Blessed Mary wore. For infidels to wield you would be wrong. Your service is for Christian men alone, and may no craven coward take you up. So many vast lands I have won with you, that now are held by grizzle-bearded Charles, and bring the emperor riches and might.
Now Roland feels that death closes its grip, descending from his head down to his heart. Running, he makes his way beneath a pine, and on the green grass he prostrates himself, placing beneath him sword and oliphant. His head he turns toward the infidel, because he wishes from his very soul that Charles and all his company shall say, "This noble Count has died a conqueror." Then, beating many times upon his breast, he offers for his sins his glove to God. Now Roland feels his life is at an end. Upon a steep hilltop he faces Spain, and with his hand he beats against his breast.
God, I confess my sins before your might. Forgive me for the faults, both great and small, that I've committed since I first drew breath, until this day, when I am stricken down.
Then his right glove he held aloft to God. Angels descend from heaven to his side. Roland the Count lies there beneath a pine, his face he set toward the realm of Spain. His mind began to turn on divers things, the many lands he had with valor won, fair France, the men of his own lineage, and Charlemagne, his patron and his lord. He could but weep and sigh with heavy heart, but he was not forgetful of himself, and begged God to have mercy for his sins.
Our rightful Father, fountain of all truth, who from the dead raised holy Lazarus, and guarded Daniel in the lion's den, protect my soul from every peril now, and from the sins committed while I lived.
Then his right glove he offered up to God. Saint Gabriel received it from his hand. He held his head bowed down upon his arm, folded his hands, and went to meet his end. To him God sent his angel cherubim, together with Saint Michael du Paril, and with them both there came Saint Gabriel, to bear the Count's soul up to paradise. Roland is dead, his soul with God in heaven. The Emperor is come to Roncevaux. There is no way there, and no single track, no open ground, no yard, or even foot, where neither infidel nor Frenchman lies. Charles calls aloud,
Fair nephew, where are you? Where's the Archbishop? Count Oliver? Gérin and his comrade Gerrier? Auton, Count Bérangier? Where's Yvon and Ivoire, so dear to me? Angelier of Gascony, Duke Sampson, and the noble Anseis? And where is old Gerard of Roussillon? Where then are these 12 peers I left behind? God, how dire is my dismay not to have been here to begin the fray.
He plucks his beard like a man racked with grief. Tears fill the eyes of all his barren knights. Together 20,000 swooning fall. Duke Nemus is filled with pity for their sake. There is no knight or baron on the field, but, pricked by pity, weeps abundantly. They mourn their nephews, brothers, and their sons, and all their friends and their liege lords besides, and most of them fall swooning to the ground. But then Duke Nemus showed his true gallantry, and spoke the first words to the Emperor.
Look over there, 2 leagues ahead of us. See on the highways how the dust clouds rise? Great numbers of the pagan folk are there. Ride on, and take revenge for our distress.
God, they are so far away. But grant that honor and justice be done. They plucked from me the flower of fair France.
The king commands Jaboin and Auton, Tedbald of Reims, and with him Count Milon.
Guard well the field, the mountains and the vales, and let the slain lie there just as they are, untouched by lion or by any beast, and undisturbed by any squire or knave. I bid you see that no man touches them, until, please God, I come back to the field.
The Emperor then has his bugle sound, and forward with his great host nobly rides. Now they have made the Spaniards turn their backs, and all together join in the pursuit. But when the king sees that the evening falls, dismounting on a verdant meadow's grass, he lies down on the ground and prays to God that for him he may make the sun stand still, make the day linger, and the night delay. An angel then, with whom he often spoke, appeared to him, and gave this prompt command. Ride on then, Charles. The daylight shall not fail. God knows you've lost the finest flower of France. You may avenge them on the felon folk. For Charlemagne a mighty miracle God wrought, and stayed the sun there where it stood. The pagans flee, the Franks hotly pursue, catch up with them in the Val Tenebros, chasing them hard toward Saragossa's walls, slaying them as they go with mighty blows. They block their roads and cut off their main routes. The Ebro's waters flow before them now, rushing and terrible and wondrous deep. There is no ferry, barge, or galley there. The pagans call to their god Tervagant. Then they leap in, but there is no escape. Those who are fully armed weigh heaviest, and many of them sink down in the depths. The rest, who float, are swept down with the stream, and the more fortunate have drunk so much that they are all drowned with dreadful suffering. The Frenchmen shout,
"Alas, Roland, for you!"
When Charles sees all the infidels are dead, many slain by the sword, but still more drowned, leaving behind great booty for his knights, the noble king, dismounting from his steed, lies on the ground and gives his thanks to God. When he rose to his feet, the sun had set. The emperor said,
"It is time to camp. Too late now to return to Roncesvalles, for all our steeds are flagging with fatigue. Unsaddle them, loose the reins from their heads, and let them rest and graze among these fields."
The emperor has now set up his camp. In open country all the Franks dismount, remove the saddles from their horses' backs, unfasten from their heads the golden reins, and turn them to the fresh grass in the fields. No other, better care is theirs to give. A weary man will sleep well on the earth. No single sentinel that night was set. Down in a meadow lay the emperor, the nobleman, his great spear at his head. That night he would not take his armor off, kept his bright burnished hauberk on his back, and still his gilded jewelled helm was laced, and at his side was girt peerless Joyeuse, which changes colour 30 times a day. There is much we could tell about the lance, with which our Lord was wounded on the cross. Charles had its tip, for which praise be to God, and in the gilded pommel had it set. In token of this honour and this grace, the name Joyeuse was given to the sword. This the French noblemen should not forget. From it they took their battle cry, Montjoie! So over them no people can prevail. Clear is the night, and shining is the moon. Charles lies at rest, but grieves for Roland's sake. And he is much distressed for Oliver, for the 12 peers and all the men of France. In Roncesvalles they're left, bloody and dead, and he cannot but grieve and mourn for them, and pray for God's protection for their souls. The king's great anguish has so wearied him he falls asleep, for he can do no more. Now all the Franks throughout the meadow sleep. There is no horse that can stay on its feet. Those that will graze must do so lying down. He has learned much who has known suffering. Charles lies asleep, like a tormented man. Saint Gabriel is sent to him by God, with the command to guard the emperor. All night the angel watches at his head, and through a vision he makes known to him that there will be a battle he must face, and shows him very grievous signs of it. Charles raises up his eyes towards the sky, sees there the freezing winds and thunderclouds, the gales and dreadful raging of the storms, abounding with great flames and bursts of fire that hurtle down on his whole company, kindling the shafts of ash and applewood. Shields blaze right to their bosses of pure gold. The shafts of the sharp spears are split apart, steel helmets buckle, and hauberks are crushed. He sees the knights suffer in great distress. Bent on devouring them come leopards, bears, serpents, reptiles, dragons, demons too, with 30,000 griffins at the least. Each of them hurls itself upon the French, who cry aloud, "Help us now, Charlemagne!" At this, great grief and pity fill the king. Though he would go to them, he is restrained. From a wood, a great lion springs at him, grim and ferocious in its arrogance. Straight at the king presses its attack. They come to grips to try each other's strength, but which prevails or falls he cannot tell. The emperor does not wake from his sleep. After this vision, Yet again he dreamed. He was in France, at Aix, on a stone step, and held a bear there, fettered with 2 chains. From the Ardennes he saw 30 bears come, each of them speaking as it were a man. They said to him, "Sire, yield him up to us. To hold him longer you have not the right. We must stand by our kinsman in his need." Then from his palace there runs up a hound, that falls upon the biggest of their band, fighting apart from them on the green grass. And there the king saw such a wondrous clash, but cannot tell which of them will win. God's angel showed this to the noble lord, and Charles sleeps on until the bright day dawns. To Saragossa King Marsil takes flight, dismounts beneath a shady olive tree, puts off his sword, his byrnie, and his helm, and wretchedly lies down in the green grass. Since he had lost the whole of his right hand, he swoons in anguish from the blood he sheds. Before him Bramimond, his wife, is come. She weeps and wails and grievously laments, and with her more than 20,000 men, who heap curses on Charles and on fair France. They run to find Apollyon in a crypt, and hurl bitter abuse and rail at him.
Ah, wicked God, why bring such shame on us? Why have you let our king here be laid low? To your staunch servant you give poor reward.
His scepter and his crown they seize from him, and from a pillar hang him by his hands. Then to the ground topple him at their feet, batter and shiver him with mighty sticks. The carbuncle they take from Tervagant, and fling Mahomet down into a ditch, where pigs and dogs gnaw him and trample him. Marsil has now recovered from his swoon. He had himself borne to a vaulted room, adorned with many-colored paints and texts, and Bramimond the queen there weeps for him, tears at her hair, proclaims her wretchedness, and thereupon cries out in a loud voice,
"Ah, Saragossa, now you are bereft of the fine king who held you in his sway. These gods of ours have done a wicked deed to fail him on this morning's battlefield. The emir will succumb to cowardice if he refrains from fighting this bold folk who are so proud they hold their lives in scorn. The emperor, whose beard is hoary white, is valorous and full of recklessness. Once in a battle he will never flee. What grief that there is none to end his days."
The emperor, in his great power and might, 7 full years has been on Spanish soil, and taken many towns and fortresses. Against him King Marsil does all he can. In the first year he had his letters sealed to summon Balagan in Babylon. He is the aged emir, full of years, who has outlived Virgil and Homer too. To Saragossa this lord must bring aid. If not, he will abandon all his gods and every idol that he venerates, and will receive the holy Christian faith, and come to make his peace with Charlemagne. His lord is far off, and is long delayed. From 40 kingdoms he has called his men, and had his great dromons prepare to sail, his warships, barges, small galleys, and boats. A seaport lies by Alexandria. There he had his whole fleet fitted out, and then, in May, on the first summer day, he commits all his armies to the sea. Great are the armies of these infidels. They row, put on full sail, and steer ahead. Up at the mastheads and the lofty prows the many lanterns and carbuncles hang, and from that height cast such brightness ahead that the sea's beauty is enhanced by night. And when they come up to the shores of Spain, the land is all illumined with their gleam. Tidings of this are brought to Marsil's ears. The pagan folk have no desire to halt, but enter the fresh water from the sea. They leave behind them Marbreeze and Marbreuse, and up the river Ebro turn their ships. The lanterns and the carbuncles abound, giving them brilliant light throughout the night. At Saragossa they arrived that day. Bright is the day, and radiant the sun. The emir now has landed from his barge. Espagnolis advances on his right, while 17 kings follow in his rear. I cannot number all the counts and dukes beneath a laurel tree. Within a field they fling on the green grass a white silk cloth, and there they set a throne of ivory, where Balagan the pagan takes his seat, while all the others remain on their feet. It was their lord who was the first to speak.
Now listen well, my noble, valiant knights. Charles, king and emperor of all the Franks, should not eat without my authority. On me he's waged great war through Spain's whole length. I mean to challenge him now in fair France, and never shall give up my whole life long till he is dead, or living yields to me.
Against his knee he strikes with his right glove. Having said that, he makes the firm resolve never to fail for all the gold on earth to go to Aix, Charles' judicial seat. This course his men commend and counsel him. Thereupon he called forth 2 of his knights, one Clarifin, the other Clarien.
You are the 2 sons of King Maltrain, who gladly used to act as messenger. To Saragossa I bid you proceed, and to Marseille announce on my behalf that I have come with aid against the French. I'll join great battle if I find the place. In token, give this folded gold-trimmed glove, and have him put it onto his right hand. Take him as well this rod of solid gold, and let him come in homage for his fief. I'll go to France, to make war there on Charles. If he does not seek mercy at my feet, abandon and renounce the Christian faith, then I shall seize the crown from off his head.
The infidels reply,
Well spoken, lord.
To horse, barons, and ride. Let one carry the glove, and one the staff.
Dear lord, this we shall do.
They ride straight on to Saragossa town, crossing 4 bridges, through 10 gates they pass, and by the streets where all the townsfolk are. As they climb through the city's higher parts, a great din from the palace meets their ears. Large numbers of the infidels are there, weeping and crying out in bitter grief, mourning their gods, Mahomet, Termagant, Apollyon too, who are with them no more. Each asks the other, what will be our fate? Upon us wretches grim disaster falls, for our own King Marsil is lost to us. Count Roland lopped his right hand yesterday. We have no longer Gerfalud the fair. All Spain will lie at their mercy today. At the block the 2 messengers dismount. Beneath an olive tree they left their steeds. 2 Saracens then took them by the reins, while each holding the other by the cloak, the messengers to the high palace climbed. They went into the vaulted chamber there, with friendly greetings couched in sorry terms.
May that Mahomet, in whose power we are, Termagant, and our Lord Apollyon too, preserve the king and watch over the queen.
أشهد أن محمد رسول الله.
What great folly I hear! These gods of ours have turned their backs on us. Poor miracles they wrought in Roncevaux. They did not keep our knights from being slain, and in the fray they failed this lord of mine, for he has lost the whole of his right hand. Roland, the mighty count, has hacked it off. Charles will hold sway over the whole of Spain. What will become of me, unhappy wretch? Would that some man of mine might take my life.
Lady, say not these things. We bring word from the pagan Baligon. He promises he will protect Marsil, in token sending him his staff and glove. 4,000 lighters on the Ebro lie. Warships we have, swift galleys, barges too, and Romans whose tally I cannot tell. Mighty is the Emir, and powerful. He'll go to challenge Charlemagne in France, intent on his surrender or his death.
He need not go so far, for you may find the Franks closer at hand. He has been 7 years now in this land, the emperor, the noble warrior. He'd rather die than ever flee the field. No king on earth he rates above a child, and of no living man Charles stands in dread.
No more of that! Lord, speak with me. You see that death now has me in its grip. No son have I, no daughter and no heir. I did have one. Last evening he was slain. So tell my lord to come and see me here. The Emir has a proper right in Spain. If he will have it, I surrender it, for him then to defend against the French. And I'll assure him, as for Charlemagne, they'll have vanquished him within a month. So you will take him Saragossa's keys, and tell him if he trusts me not to leave.
Sire, what you say is true.
Charles the Emperor has slain my men and laid my land to waste, shattered my cities and seized them by force. Last night he rested on the Ebro's banks. 7 leagues hence, I reckon, and no more. Tell the Emir to lead his army up. Through you I call him to do battle there.
He handed over Saragossa's keys before him. Both the messengers bowed low, and taking leave of him, departed thence. Mounting their horses, the 2 messengers ride from the city with what speed they may, and much perturbed come straight to the Emir, presenting to him Saragossa's keys.
Tell me what you have found. Where is Marsil? I summoned him to come.
He has a mortal wound. The Emperor yesterday crossed the pass, wishing to make his way back to fair France. He left a rearguard there of great renown. Roland the Count, his nephew, stayed behind, Oliver with him, all of the 12 peers, and 20,000 of the knights of France. Noble Marsil, the king, engaged with them, and he was left with Roland on the field, who dealt him such a blow with Durendal, that from his body his right fist he clove, then slew his son, whom he had loved so much. The barons, too, whom he had brought with him. He fled, no longer able to stand firm, the Emperor giving him hot pursuit. The king now bids you come to bring him aid, and makes over to you the realm of Spain.
This plunges Bellegarde in heavy thought, and grief so great he almost leaves his wits.
Emir, sire, yesterday there was a battle fought at Roncevaux. Roland is dead, and dead Count Oliver, the 12 peers, too, whom Charles had held so dear, and 20,000 of their Frenchmen slain. But there Marsil the king lost his right hand, and was pursued close by the Emperor. There is no knight remaining in this land who is not slain, or in the Ebro drowned. Upon its banks the French have pitched their camp, and in this land have come so close to us that you can make withdrawal hard for them.
Pride comes into the eyes of Bellegarde, and joy and gladness flood into his heart. He leaves his throne and rises to his feet.
Barons, no time is to be lost. Out of the boats, and then to horse and ride. If now old Charlemagne does not take flight, Marsil the king will be avenged this day. For his right fist, I'll give him Charles' head.
The Arab infidels have left their ships, then mounted on their horses and their mules, and so they rode forth. What else should they do? The Emir, sending them all on their way, called Gamalfin, one of his confidants.
I place you in command of all my troops.
With that, he mounted on his brown battle steed. He took along with him 4 of his dukes, and all the way to Saragossa rode. There he dismounted at a marble block. His stirrup was held for him by 4 counts. Into the palace by the stairs he climbed, and Bramimond came running up to him.
Unhappy wretch am I! Sire, I have lost my lord so shamefully.
The Emir raised her, prostrate at his feet. Up to the chamber they went, full of grief. As soon as King Marsil saw Bellegarde, he called upon 2 Spanish Saracens.
Come, take me, lift me up so I may sit.
In his left hand he took one of his gloves.
Emir, my lord and king, all the lands here I make over to you, and Saragossa, along with its fief. I have lost all my people and myself.
So much the more I grieve. I have no time to parley long with you. Though I know well Charles does not wait for me, yet I will now accept this glove for you.
He goes off, weeping for the grief he feels, and from the palace by the steps descends, then, mounting, spurs his way back to his men. He rides so fast he outstrips all the rest, and as he goes, he shouts time and again,
"Come, pagans! They're already in full flight!"
When morning came, with the first light of dawn, the Emperor Charles wakened from his sleep. Saint Gabriel, who guarded him for God, raised up his hand and signed him with the cross. The king arose and put aside his arms. The others in his host disarm themselves. Then they all mount and ride off at great speed, taking the long roads and the broad highways. They go to see the frightful ravages in Roncevaux, where the great battle was. Now Charles has come again to Roncevaux, and he begins to mourn the slain he finds. To the Frenchmen he said,
"Slow now, my lords, for it is right that I go on ahead, since I would find out where my nephew lies. Once when I kept a solemn feast at Aix, my valiant knights were boasting of their deeds in mighty battles and in great affrays. Then I heard Roland for himself declare that never would he die on foreign soil, save at the front of his men and peers. His head would be turned to the foeman's land, his death that of a noble conqueror."
Further away than you can cast a stick, ahead of all the rest, Charles climbed a hill. To seek his nephew goes the emperor, and finds so many flowers of the field stained crimson with our noble baron's blood. Assailed by pity, he can only weep. Then Charles came into a place beneath 2 trees. On 3 stones saw the mark of Roland's blows. On the green grass he sees his nephew lie. It is no wonder Charles is filled with woe. Dismounting, he goes running to the spot, clutches the noble lord in his 2 hands, and swoons upon him, so great is his grief. The emperor has come round from his swoon. At that, Duke Nemus and Geoffrey of Anjou, his brother Thierry, and Count Asselin catch up the king, and raise him beneath a pine. Upon the earth he sees his nephew lie, and very softly utters this lament.
"Roland, dear friend, may God his mercy show. Never has any man seen such a knight to wage great battles and win victory. Now my great honor falls into decline."
With this, Charles cannot help but faint away. King Charles has now recovered from his swoon. 4 of his barons lend him their support. Upon the ground he sees his nephew lie, sturdy in body, but all color gone. His upturned eyes are shadowy and dim. In love and loyalty Charles mourns for him.
"Friend Roland, may God raise your soul to bliss with all his saints among celestial flowers. How wrong your lord was to bring you to Spain. Each day that dawns I shall have grief for you. How all my strength and ardor will decline. No man I'll have my honor to uphold, nor do I think one single friend remains. Though I have kinsmen, none such prowess show."
With both his hands he tugs and tears his locks. 100,000 Franks so grieve for him that every one of them weeps bitterly.
"Roland, dear friend, now I shall go to France. When I'm in my own domain at Leon, foreigners will arrive from many lands, and they will ask, 'Where is the Captain Count?' And I shall say that he is dead in Spain. Then with great dolor I shall rule my realm. My days will pass in weeping and laments. Roland, fair friend, noble and worthy youth, when I have gone to my chapel in Aix, the men will come and they will ask for news. What I shall tell is terrible and grim. Dead is my nephew, victor in my wars. The Saxons will rise up against my rule, Bulgars, Hungarians, so many foes. Those from Palermo, Rome, Apulia, the Africans, and men from Calaferin. Then will begin my hardship and distress. Who with such spirit can command my hosts, when he is dead who always led us on? Alas, fair France, how you remain bereft! Such grief is mine that I would live no more.
Then he begins to tug at his white beard, and with both hands tears the hair on his head. 100,000 francs swoon to the ground.
Roland, dear friend, may God his mercy show, and in his paradise receive your soul. On France your slayer brought calamity. Such grief as mine I would no longer live. Grief for my company here slain for me. May God the Son of Blessed Mary grant, before I come to the chief pass of seas, that my soul from my body flee this day, to find with them its place and its abode, and let my flesh be buried beside theirs.
Tears fill his eyes, he tugs at his white beard, and Duke Nemus said,
Great now is Charles' grief.
Said Geoffrey of Anjou,
Emperor, sire, be comforted and let your grief abate. Have the whole battlefield searched for our men whom those from Spain have slain in the affray, and have them carried to a single grave.
Sound your horn. It shall be done.
His bugle Geoffrey of Anjou has blown. The Frenchmen dismount, for Charles has bidden it. And all their friends they found dead on the field were carried to one grave without delay. The many bishops and the abbots there, the monks, the canons, and the tonsured priests absolved the dead, and crossed them in God's name. They kindled incense then, and fragrant myrrh, and with much zeal they censed them every one. They showed great honor when they buried them, and then they left them. What more could they do? The emperor has Roland's corpse prepared, Oliver's, and Archbishop Turpin's too. He has them opened there before his eyes, and all their hearts wrapped in a silken cloth. In a white marble coffin they are placed. Some of the barons took the bodies then, and in the hides of stags they wrapped the lords, well washed with fragrant essences and wine. The king commands Tedbald, and Gebuin, Milon the count, and the Marquis Auton.
Escort them on the highway in 3 carts.
They lie beneath a cloth of eastern silk. The Emperor Charles wishes to depart. Then, suddenly, the pagan van appears. 2 messengers come forth from the front ranks, called him to battle in the Emir's name.
Arrogant king, the time's not ripe to leave. See Baligan as he rides after you.
Great are his hosts brought from Arabia. This day will see if you are valorous.
King Charles at this puts his hand to his beard, remembering his grief and his sore loss. Then, full of pride, he looks at all his men, and in a strong, loud voice he calls to them.
French barons, mount your horses and to arms!
The emperor arms himself first of all, and in a great haste he puts his byrnie on, laces his helmet, and girds on Joyeuse, whose brilliance cannot be dimmed by the sun. At his neck, hanging a shield from Bitterne, he firmly grasps his spear, brandishes it, then mounts upon his good horse, Tonsondieu. He won it at the fords below Marsan, felled from its back Malpalin of Narbonne. Loosing its rein, he spurs time and again. 100,000 men watch him leap forth, calling on God and on the Pope of Rome. Charles called upon Rabel and Guillemot. Then said the king,
I command you, my lords, to take up Roland's post and Oliver's. One take the sword and one the Oliphant, and then ride on ahead in the front rake, with 15,000 Franks along with you, young knights chosen from our most valiant men. After them there will be as many more, and Gueboin and Morand will lead them.
Duke Nemus, together with Count Jozerin, takes care to order 3 divisions well, to give great battle if they find the chance. The first divisions are formed by the French, and after these 2 they draw up the 3rd, in it the vassals from Bavaria. The 4th is then drawn up by Nemus the Duke. Germans they are, full 20,000. Duke Nemus, together with Count Jozerin, from Normans drew the 5th division up. The 6th division was of Breton men. The 7th was then drawn up. men of Poitou and barons of Auvergne. The 8th Division was drawn up from Flemings and barons of Frisia. The 9th Division formed from valiant men, those from Lorraine and those from Burgundy. The 10th Division has the lords of France. Now from his horse the emperor dismounts, and with face downwards lies on the green grass. Turning his face towards the rising sun, he calls on God from the depths of his heart.
Defend me, O true father, on this day, you who to Jonah full protection gave when he was in the body of the whale, spared the life of the king of Nineveh, saved Daniel from his terrible distress when he was plunged into the lion's den, and the 3 children in a blazing fire. May your love be with me throughout this day, and by your mercy, if it please you, grant that Roland my nephew I may avenge.
When he has prayed, he rises to his feet, and signs his head with the all-powerful cross. The king then mounts upon his rapid steed, his stirrup held by Nemus and Jozerin. He grasps his shield and his sharp-pointed spear. Nobly he bears his fine and sturdy frame. A frank assurance shines forth from his face, and then, firm in the stirrups, he rides forth. The bugles sound ahead, and in the rear, above the rest, rings out the elephant. For pity of Roland, the Frenchmen weep. The emperor rides very nobly on, his beard laid out upon his Bearnese breast. For love of him the others do the same. 100,000 Franks are thus picked out. Over the hills and highest rocks they go, through the deep valleys and the grim defiles, out through the passes and wasteland they ride, to come into the marches towards Spain, and there to take their stand upon a plain. To Balagan his vanguards have returned, and now a Syrian gives his report.
We've seen King Charles in all his arrogance. His proud men have no thought to fail him now. So arm yourselves, battle will soon be joined.
Of true valor you tell. Sound forth your bugles, so my pagans know.
The emir looks a true baron indeed. He has a beard as white as any flower, and in his faith is excellently versed. In battle he is full of haughty pride. His son Malpremise is a splendid knight, tall, strong, and cast in his ancestors' mould. To his father he said,
Sire, let us ride. I'll be amazed if we ever see Charles.
We shall, so brave is he. Of his high honours many annals tell. Of Roland his nephew he is deprived, and to withstand us he will not have the strength. Fair son Malpremise, Roland the good vassal 2 days ago was slain with gallant, valiant Oliver, and the 12 peers who were so dear to Charles, and 20,000 warriors from France. I think none of the rest are worth a glove. It is true that the emperor returns. So says my messenger, the Syrian. 10 huge divisions are now on their way. A man of valor sounds the elephant. His comrade, with clear bugle calls, replies, and they ride on together in the van, along with 15,000 of the Franks. Young knights, his children, as Charles calls them all. The same number again come after them, and very arrogantly they will strike.
Then grant me the first blow.
Son Malpremise, I grant in full what you have asked of me. Soon you will go to strike against the French. Then, if you can quell this great arrogance, I will bestow upon you part of my land from Chariant up to the Val Marchis.
I thank you, sire.
And he comes forward to receive the gift, which is the land governed by King Fleury, though never did he see it from that time, nor was invested or endowed with it. Of great wisdom the emir is possessed. He calls to him his son and the 2 kings.
My lord barons, you will ride on ahead, and my entire divisions you shall lead. But I wish to retain 3 of the best, the first of Turks, the next of Ormalaeus, and the third of the giants of Malprose. And those of Ossient will be with me, to join in combat with Charles and the French. Then, if the emperor duels with me, he must needs have his head struck from his trunk. Let him not doubt, he'll have no other right.
Great are the hosts and the divisions fine. Between them is no hill, hillock, or vale, no forest, wood, or anywhere to hide. They sight each other well in open land.
All you my infidels, ride forward to engage the battle now.
Precious! Au revoir! Vast is the plain, and wide the countryside. The helmets gleam with their gems set in gold, so too the saffroned byrnies and the shields, the spears and ensigns flying from their shafts. The bugles sound with a clear, ringing call, and loud and high there peals the Oliphant. Balagant has outstripped his companies. In these words he appealed and spoke to them.
Come, pagans, for I start upon my way.
With that he brandished his spear by the shaft, turning the point of it straight toward Charles. When Charlemagne caught sight of the emir, and of his dragon, standard, and ensign, and the Arabians in such vast strength that the whole countryside they occupy, save that which is held by the emperor, the King of France called out in a loud voice,
French barons, splendid vassals you all are, and on so many battlefields you fought. See here the wicked, craven infidels, whose whole faith is not worth a penny piece. Though they are many, what of that, my lords? He who will not come with me, let him go.
With this he set his spurs into his horse, and Consendur made 4 great leaps for him. Malpremise sits upon a pure white horse. He hurls himself into the Frankish press, striking great blows at one man and the next, felling them corpse upon corpse time and again. Balagant calls aloud before the rest.
My barons, long I've had you in my care. Now see my son. He goes in search of Charles, vying in arms with so many great lords. I never asked better vassal than he. Go and support him with your own sharp spears. Strike, pagans, you are come for nothing else. I'll give to you noble and lovely wives, and I will give you fiefs, domains, and lands.
More than 100,000 swords are drawn. See now the grievous and bitter melee. All who will join them see a true affray. The emperor calls now upon the French.
My lords and barons, I love and trust in you. You've waged so many battles for my sake, realms you have conquered and their kings dethroned. For this I grant, I owe you a reward, paid with my person, my lands and my wealth. Avenge your sons, your brothers and your heirs, all slain the other eve at Roncesvalles. Against the pagans, you know right is mine.
Some 20,000 of them are with him, who with one voice pledge him their loyalty, never to fail him for death or distress. Not one of them but uses his lance well, and then straightway they smite on with their swords. Wondrously violent is the affray. Malpremise goes riding about the field, bringing great harm upon the men of France. Proudly and fiercely Duke Naimes looks at him, and goes to strike him like a valiant man. His shield he shatters at the upper rim, and knocks the saffron from his hauberk's skirts, thrusts the whole yellow standard into him, and fells him dead amid 700 more. King Canabir, brother of the emir, has driven his spurs well into his horse, and he has drawn his crystal-pommelled sword to strike at Naimes upon his princely helm. He breaks away half of it on one side, 5 of its laces sliced by the sword's steel. The hood avails him not a penny piece. He cuts the coif through to the flesh beneath, knocking a piece of it onto the ground. The blow was mighty, and the duke was stunned. Without God's aid, he would have dropped at once. Instead, he flung his arms round his steed's neck, but had the pagan renewed the attack, the noble vassal had been straightway slain. Then Charles of France came there to rescue him. Duke Naimes is suffering in great distress. The pagan goads him to return the blow. Said Charles,
Rogue, you attacked him for your ill?
He goes to strike him with all his great might, shatters his shield, crushing it to his heart, and the ventail of his hauberk rends apart, and emptying his saddle fells him dead. Great is the grief of Charlemagne the king when he sees Naimes wounded before his eyes, his bright blood falling down on the green grass. The emperor said to him privately,
Naimes, my fair lord, pray come and ride with me. The scoundrel who pressed you so hard is dead. I dropped him with a single good lance thrust.
Sire, I have trust in you. If I live more, great benefit you'll have.
Then side by side in love and loyalty they rode, and with them 20,000 French. No man among them fails to strike and smite. The emir rides about the battlefield, and goes to strike at Grimont, the count. He shatters his white shield against his breast, and the skirts of his hauberk rends apart. From both sides of his trunk he cleaves his flanks, to topple him down dead from his swift horse. Next he slew both Jeboin and Laurent, and then Richard the Old, the Norman's lord. Had you seen those knights of Arabia, of Océante, of Argueil, and of Bascle, they strike and smite doughtily with their spears, nor have the French a mind to quit the field. There very many of both sides are slain. The battle rages on till evening falls, with heavy losses to the Frankish lords. There will be grieving ere its course is run. The Frenchmen and the Arabs strike fine blows, the shafts and furbished spears splinter apart. Had you but seen the shields so battered there, or heard the brightly shining hauberks ring, and shields against the helmets grating loud, had you but seen the falling of the knights, and screaming men dying upon the earth, then you might well remember bitter grief. This battle is a cruel one to bear. The emir calls Apollyon to his aid, Mahomet too, and with them Tervagant.
O my lord gods, I have served you long years. I will make all your idols of pure gold.
One of his friends, Gamalfin, now steps up. He brings bad news, and thus addresses him.
Baligant, sire, ill you have fared today, for Malpremise your son is lost to you, and Quennebeu, your brother, has been slain. Upon two of the Frenchmen fortune smiled. One of them was the Emperor, I think. He's tall of stature, with a leader's mien, his beard as white as any April flower.
At this the emir's helmet is bowed down. Then he lowers his face toward the ground, thinking to die at once from his great grief. He called upon Jongleur from Outremer.
Come forward now, Jongleur. You are a valiant man and very wise. Always I have respected your advice. How do you think Arabs and Franks will fare? Shall we achieve victory in the field?
You are dead, Baligon, for never will your gods protect you now. So proud is Charles and valorous his men, I never saw such people for a fight. But call upon the lords of Océante, the Arabs, giants, Enfront, and the Turks. Do not put off whatever has to be.
The emir now has let his beard hang free, as white it is as any hawthorn flower, for he spurns all concealment, come what may. He puts a clear-voiced trumpet to his mouth, and loudly sounds it so his pagans hear. His companies rally throughout the field. The men of Océante both bray and neigh, while those of Argueil yelp and bark like dogs. So recklessly they then attack the Franks, and part and divide them where they are most thick. At this assault they fell 7,000 dead. Count Augier was no man for cowardice. Birny was never dawned by better night, and when he saw the French divisions break, he called on Thierry, Duke of Orgon, Geoffrey of Anjou, and Count Jozerin. With utmost pride he thus addresses Charles.
See how the pagans are slaying your men? May God forbid that you should wear your crown unless you strike now to avenge your shame.
There is no man replies a single word. Spurring with zest, they give their steeds their heads, and go to strike them where they may be found. Fine blows are struck by Charlemagne the king. Duke Nemus smites well, and with Augier the Dane, the standard-bearer Geoffrey of Anjou. Full of great prowess is Augier the Dane. Into a full gallop he pricks his horse, and strikes the dragon-bearer with such force that there before him he destroys Ambor, the royal ensign, and the dragon too. Baligant sees his ganflin brought down, and also sees Mahomet's standard stayed. At this the emir starts to realize that he is wrong, and Charlemagne is right. The pagans from Arabia retreat. To his own people calls the emperor.
Say, lords, in God's name, give me aid.
The day draws on. Evening begins to fall. The Franks and pagans strike out with their swords. Valiant are those who locked the hosts in strife. They have not put their war cries from their minds. Now the emir has shouted,
Précieuses!
And Charles,
Montjoie!
The famous battle call. Each knew the other by his loud, clear voice, and so, charging together in the field, they went to strike, gave and received great blows. They smite their circled targes with their spears, and above the board bosses shatter them. And then their hauberk skirts they rend apart, but leave each other's body quite untouched. The girths burst, and the saddles slip and turn. Both the kings fall and tumble to the ground, then swiftly rise up on their feet again. Now with great valor they have drawn their swords. Never will this combat of theirs be stopped. Only with one man dead its end will come. Charles of fair France is very valorous. The emir holds him in no fear or dread. Each to the other shows his naked sword, exchanging on their shields prodigious blows, slicing the leather and the double board. The nails fall and the bosses fly apart. On their unguarded byrnies then they smite. From their bright helmets fly up fiery sparks. This is a combat that can never cease, unless one of them should admit his wrong.
Now, Charles, take careful thought. Resolve to show repentance toward me. You've slain my son, as I know very well, and criminally you dispute my land. Become my vassal, swear me loyalty, come and serve me right to the Orient.
What great baseness this seems to me. I should grant pagans neither peace nor love. Receive the faith that God reveals to us, the Christian faith, and I'll love you at once. Believe and serve then the Almighty King.
Your homily starts ill.
Then with their girded swords they set to strike. The emir is possessed of mighty power. On Charlemagne's burnished steel helm he strikes, bursts it, and splits it open to his head, bringing the sword down upon his thick locks, slicing away a full palm's breadth and more, to lay the bone at that place quite exposed. Charles staggers, and he very nearly falls, but God did not wish him vanquished or slain, and so Saint Gabriel returned to him, and asked him, "Great king, what are you about?" When Charles had heard the holy angel's voice, he had no fear or dread that he would die. His memory and force returned to him. He strikes the emir with the sword of France, shatters his helmet where the gems blaze forth, cleaves his head open, and spills out the brains, and cuts through the whole face to the white beard, to fell him dead utterly past recall.
Montjoie!
He cries to rally all his men. Hearing the call, Duke Naimes comes up to him. He takes Tonsandeur, and the great king mounts. The pagans turn. God would not have them stay, and now the French have at those whom they seek. The pagans flee, as is the Lord God's will. The Franks and emperor ride in pursuit.
Now, my lords, avenge your griefs. Work out your wrath and raise up all your hearts. Your eyes I saw this morning filled with tears.
Each man then strikes what mighty blows he can. Few of the pagans there made their escape. Great is the heat, and high the dust clouds rise. The pagans flee, and the French harry them. To Saragossa the pursuit goes on. Up to her tower Bramimond has climbed. With her have gone her canons and her clerks, of the false faith that never had God's love. They are not tonsured, no orders have they. When she beheld the Arabs so dismayed, she cried aloud,
"Mahomet, give us aid! Ah, noble king, our men are vanquished now, and the emir is slain so shamefully."
When Marsile hears her, he turns to the wall. Tears fill his eyes, his whole face is cast down. From grief he dies, prey to calamity. His soul he gives up to the fiends of hell. The infidels are dead, or some in flight, and in his battle Charles has won the day. Now Saragossa's gate is broken down. He knows full well he has no more defense. He takes the city, and his men come in. That night they all lie there as conquerors. The grizzle-bearded king is full of pride. From Bramimont he has received the towers, 10 of them high, the other 50 small. He whom the Lord God helps does his task well. The day has waned, and now the night descends. The moon is bright. The blazing stars shine forth. The emperor all Saragossa holds. He has 1,000 French comb the town well, searching the mosques and every heathen shrine. With iron mallets and axes in hand, the statues and each idol they destroy. No sorcery or false thing will remain. The king believes in God, will serve him well, and so his bishops bless the waters there, and lead the pagans to the baptistries. If there is any still opposed to Charles, he has him hanged, or burnt, or put to death. Over 100,000 are baptized, true Christians, except only for the queen. She will be led a captive to fair France. The king wants her through love to take the faith. The night is past, and bright the day appears. Charles garrisoned all Saragossa's towers, and there he left 1,000 trusty knights to hold the town safe for the emperor. The king and every one of his men mount, with Bramimond, led to captivity. He intends nothing but good for her. With joy and jubilation they returned, and on their way they took Narbonne by storm. Then Charles came to the city of Bordeaux. Upon noble Saint-Cyrin's altar there, he placed the oliphant filled with gold coins. Pilgrims may see it when they pass that way. Then with great ships he crosses the Gironde. As far as Blaye he brings his nephew back, and his companion, noble Oliver, and the archbishop, that wise, worthy man. He has the barons in white coffins laid, and there the lords still lie in Saint-Romain. The Franks commend them to God and his names. Charles rides across the mountains and the vales, and will not rest till he has come to Aix. His ride done, he dismounted on the block. When to his lofty palace he has come, he sends his judge's word and summons them, Saxons, Bavarians, men of Lorraine, Germans and Frisians, Burgundians, Normans he calls, Bretons, men of Poitou, and all the wisest in the realm of France. The trial now begins of Ganelon. The emperor has now returned from Spain, and come to Aix, his finest seat in France. Up to the palace and the halls he goes. Before him comes the lovely damsel Aude, who asks,
"Where is the Captain Roland now, who swore to take me as his wedded bride?"
At this Charles grieves, and heavy is his heart. Tears fill his eyes, he tugs at his white beard.
My dear sweet friend, you ask of a dead man, but I will give you very fair exchange. Louis, I mean, better I cannot say. He is my son, my kingdom will be his.
This speech is strange to me. If it please God, his angels, and his saints, with Roland dead, may I not stay alive.
Her colour drains, at Charles' feet she falls. Straightway she dies. May God preserve her soul. For her the French lords weep, and loud lament. Her end has come, fair Aude has breathed her last. The emperor thinks she has swooned away, and moved by pity for her, the king weeps, and takes her in his hands to raise her up. But on her shoulder rests her drooping head. Then, when Charles sees that she is truly dead, he calls 4 countesses without delay, and to a convent she is borne away. There they watch over her throughout the night. Then by an altar bury her with pomp. Great honour is paid to her by the king. The emperor is back again in Aix. In iron chains the wicked Ganelon stands by the palace in the citadel. There to a stake varlets have bound him fast, securing both his hands with deer-hide thongs. And there they beat him well with sticks and staves. No better fate than this has he deserved. His trial he awaits in grief and pain. As in the ancient annals we may read, Charles summoned vassals from several lands, and in his chapel they gathered at Aix. It is high festival, a solemn time. Some say it was good St. Sylvester's Day. Now the case starts, and the trial begins of Ganelon, who worked the treachery. He is dragged forth before the emperor.
My noble lords, pronounce true judgment now on Ganelon. He came with me in my army to Spain. He lost me 20,000 of my French. My nephew, too, whom you'll not see again, as well as courtly, valiant Oliver. For his own gain the 12 peers he betrayed,
said Ganelon.
This I'd be wrong to hide. In goods and gold Roland once cheated me, for that I sought his ruin and his death. But I maintain there is no treason there.
The Franks reply, "We will take counsel now." Erect before the king stood Ganelon, sturdy his frame, good colour in his face. Loyal he would have seemed, a noble knight. He sees all of the judges and the French, and 30 kinsfolk who have come with him. And then in loud and ringing tones he cries,
"Now hear me, barons, for the love of God! Lords, in the army of the emperor I was, and served him loyally with love. Roland his nephew harbored hate for me, and sought to send me to my death and woe. I bore the message to Marsile the king, and by my wits I came safely away. I had defied Roland the warrior, and Oliver, and their companions too. Charles and his noble barons heard full well, revenge I have taken, but have not betrayed."
The Franks reply, "To council we will go." Ganelon sees his great trial begin, and with him he has 30 of his kin. To one of them the others all defer, Pinabel of the Chateau de Sorens. His speech is fair, and full of good advice, valiant in arms, and in defence is he. Ganelon said,
"I trust in you, my friend, from mortal accusations. Free me now."
Said Pinabel,
"Your rescue is at hand. If any Frenchman counsels that you hang, and then the Emperor pits us in fight, with my steel sword I'll prove him in the wrong."
Count Ganelon casts himself at his feet. The Saxons and Bavarians discuss with men from Poitou, Normandy, and France. Germans are there in force, and Teutons too. Those from Auvergne excel in courtly ways. Because of Pinabel they speak the less. One to the other says,
"Let's leave it there, give up the trial, and beseech the king that this time he let Ganelon go free, henceforth to love and serve him loyally."
Roland is dead. You'll not see him again, nor will he be regained for goods or gold. Only a fool would seek to duel now.
This every man grants freely and agrees, except Thierry, brother of Lord Geoffrey. His barons now return to Charlemagne, and to the king they say,
"Sire, we beseech that you should let Count Ganelon go free, henceforth to love and serve you loyally. Spare him, for he's a very noble man. His death will not restore the valiant lord, nor will wealth ever win him back for us."
You would all play me false.
When Charles sees all his men have failed him there, his head and face sink down upon his breast. In grief then he proclaims his wretchedness. Before him now there steps a knight, Thierry, brother of Geoffrey, a duke of Anjou. His frame is spare, his body lank and lean, his hair is black, and swarthy is his face. A man of middle size, not short, not tall. With courtesy he faced the emperor.
"Fair lord and king, forget now your distress. You know full well of my services. By right of lineage I put this case. Though Roland may have cheated Ganelon, in your service he should have been secure. Betraying that is Ganelon's true crime. His perjury and treason against you. For this I ask that he die by the rope, and that his body be torn limb from limb. If he has kinsmen to contest my plea, with this good sword I carry at my side, my verdict will be backed without delay."
The Franks reply, "What you have said is right." Pinabel came to stand before the king, tall, strong, and agile, and a valiant knight, a man who feels his blow must end his days.
"Sire, this hearing's yours, so give your order for this noise to cease. Here I see Thierry, who has made his plea, so false I deem it I will fight with him."
He hands to Charles his right-hand deerskin glove.
"I ask good surety."
At this his 30 kinsmen pledge their faith.
"On these terms you'll have your man."
He has them guarded till justice be done. When Thierry sees this combat will take place, his right-hand glove he offers to the king. The emperor accepts his surety. Then he has 4 benches carried to that place. Those who are about to fight will sit, the rest accept their challenges as fair. Auger of Denmark sees the forms observed, and then they ask for horses and for arms. With the arrangements for the combat made, both are confessed and shriven with the cross. They hear their masses, take communion, and in the churches place great offerings. Then into Charles' presence they return, and when their spurs are fitted to their heels, they don their strong light hauberks, shining bright, and on their heads they set their polished helms, gird on their swords, with pure gold at the hilts, and from the necks they hang their quartered shields, and in their right hands catch up their sharp spears. Then they are mounted on their dashing steeds. At that there weep 100,000 knights, all pitying Thierry for Roland's sake. God in his wisdom knows what will befall. Down below Aix a spacious meadow lies. There the two barons' combat is engaged. They both are gallant and most valiant men, and swift and mettlesome their battle steeds. They spur them well, and let the reins go free. Each strikes the other with tremendous force. Both of their shields are shattered and destroyed. Their hauberks rend, their girths are torn to shreds. With their bows turned, the saddles slip and fall. 100,000 men watch them and weep. Now the knights are together on the ground, but quickly they rise up onto their feet. Nimble is Pinabel, and swift and strong. Without their steeds, each one attacks in turn, and with their swords, whose hilts are of pure gold, they strike on the steel helms, and smite again. The helmets scarce withstand the mighty blows. Great anguish fills the hearts of the French knights.
"O God, make plain where justice lies,"
said Pinabel.
Thierry, give up this fight. Then I will be your man in loyal love. Give you my wealth, as much as you would wish, if, with the king, you make Ganelon's peace.
Thierry replies,
"I'll never dream of it. I'll be a villain to grant that to you. Let God decide today who's in the right. Pinabel, gallant you are, your body tall and strong and nobly made. Your peers well know what valor is in you. So stop this duel, let us fight no more. Then I will make your peace with Charlemagne. But such justice he'll take on Ganelon. It will be talked about forevermore."
May God not grant it so. To all my kinsmen I'll lend my support, and not give up for any living man. I'd rather die than suffer that reproach.
Then with their swords they start to smite again upon the gilded helms with jewels set. Like fire the bright sparks fly up to the sky. Nothing can part or separate them now. Only at one man's death the end will come. Right valiant is Pinabel of Sorance. He strikes at Thierry on his helm of Provence. Such fire flies from it that it burns the grass. And now he turns his sword steel point to him, bringing it slashing down upon his brow. Cutting across the face the blow descends, leaving his right cheek streaming with his blood, and splits his hauberk open to the waist. But God saved him from being struck down dead. Thierry has felt the wound upon his face. His blood falls bright upon the meadow's grass. He smites Pinabel's helm of shining steel. Down to the nasal, splits and sunders it. And from his head he spills out all his brains. His blow he forces home, and fells him dead. With this one stroke, the combat has been won. God has worked a miracle. Now it is just that Ganelon be hanged, with all his kinsmen who upheld his case. When in the combat Thierry has prevailed, straight up to him came Charles the Emperor, and with him came 4 of his noble lords. Ogier of Denmark and Duke Nemus were there, Geoffrey of Anjou and William of Blay. The king embraces Thierry in his arms, wipes his face with his great marten furs. These he takes off, and others are put on. Then very gently they disarm the knight. They mount him upon an Arabian mule, and he returns in joyous company. To Aix they come, and in the square dismount. Then there begins the slaughter of the rest. Now Charles appeals to all his counts and dukes.
"What should I do with those I have detained? They came here to support Ganelon's cause and were my hostages for Pinabel."
The Franks reply,
Let none remain alive!
To his provost, Basbrun, the king commands,
"Go, hang them all on the accursed tree, and by the hoary hairs of this my beard, if one escapes, you'll die and perish too."
He and 100 sergeants hail them off, and of the 30 every one is hanged. Traitors work their own deaths, and others too. The Germans and Bavarians return, the Bretons, Normans, and men of Poitou. The Franks it was who above all decreed that Ganelon should die in agony. They have 4 battle steeds brought to the place, and bind him to them by his hands and feet. The horses are so swift and mettlesome. 4 servants goad and urge them on ahead, towards a stream that flows across a field. There Ganelon to grim perdition came. His every nerve is stretched to breaking point, and all his limbs are smashed and torn apart. His bright blood spills and spreads on the green grass. So Ganelon has died a felon's death. A traitor should not live to vaunt his deed. The emperor, when his vengeance was done, summoned together his bishops of France, those of Bavaria and Germany.
I have a noble captive in my house, whom parables and sermons have induced to trust in God and seek the Christian faith. Baptize her, so that God may have her soul.
Then let her have godmothers.
High ladies, many crosses too are brought. Great are the throngs within the baths at Aix, and there they have the Queen of Spain baptized. They find for her the name of Juliane. Christian she is, and knows the one true faith. When now the emperor's justice is done, and his great anger has quite spent its force, he brings Bramamon to the Christian faith. The day has waned, and now the night descends, and in his vaulted chamber the king lies. Saint Gabriel brings this message from God. Charles, summon your imperial armies now. With them you must invade the land of Beer, and go to aid King Vivien in Amph, the city that the infidels besiege. The Christians call, and cry out for your aid. The emperor had no desire to go.
God, how weary is my life.
Tears fill his eyes, he tugs at his white beard. Here ends the story. Tyroldus completes.